out there?
The lights in the night sky. Skywatchers. We're watching.
Did you see that?
Skywatcher
on Skywatcher Radio. SkywatcherRadio.com.
This is Deborah Jane East with DJ Flame of UFORadio.pro. This is a special broadcast with our guest Steve Mera. It's a long, entertaining show, so be sure you listen to all 3 parts.
Right, I can tell I've done it because I've got 2 pictures.
That's right, I have it all.
One slightly sexy picture. A good-looking lady.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we're all online here now.
I'm talking about Steve, the crossdresser.
I'm sure he appreciates that now.
I've lost you. You're frozen.
Right, I don't know.
How are you doing, Steve?
Hello?
I'm doing fine, thanks. How are you?
Oh, great. I'm over here in North Carolina, close to Mayberry, RFD.
Have you gone?
Yeah, you were just dropping out a little bit there.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
By the way, I was only joking about the cross-dressing bit. That's me.
Oh, Derek Savory will really have a good time with that now.
Yeah. Right,
yeah.
Right then, Deborah, I'm going to start recording now. Right, yeah? Are you okay?
We're good.
Right,
okay.
We'll start recording now. And then because we can put up like podcasts and stuff, because we keep on getting asked for podcasts a lot now. Right, just bear with us a minute, hang on. Oh. Right, I'm not used to this technology.
Technology.
Right, so here we go. Right, I'm going to start recording now. So, right, cancel there. Right then, so here we go. Hi, this is DJ Flame. This is UFORadio.pro and Skywatcher Radio in conjunction. And tonight I have Deborah Jane East, and our guest is Steve Mera from MAPIT, which is Manchester's Association of Paranormal Investigation and Training.
That's a mouthful.
I'll start again then, because that didn't seem to record properly then. Right, so this is DJ Flame, this is UFORadio.pro in association with Skywatcher Radio, and I am speaking tonight to Steve Mera, and my co-host is Deborah Jane East. Hi Steve, hi Jane.
Good evening, how's everybody?
Okay.
Nice to be able to talk to you tonight, Steve. I'm looking forward to this.
Did you get that yet? Did you get that, Steve? Yeah? Could you hear us then?
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah, I just had a little bit of a drop. It's okay.
Right, just get me sound levels sorted out here as well. Right, I think that's better. Right, so, Deborah won't realise, but I've known Steve for quite some time.
Yeah.
Going back when I used to be with a UFO group called International UFO Research Network.
Well, we're going back some time now, aren't we?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, I moved over here 14 years ago, and I was running that when I was back in Bradford, and I run that for a good number of years. So it must be about 18 years now.
Yeah, blimey, I don't know where the time goes.
Well, this is it, yeah. And we've basically kept in communications over the years. I mean, I've been moved and I've had all sorts of things gone on, and sort of like, so it's the first time I've really spoken to Steve for quite some time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Well, I was really impressed with the extensive background that Steve has with paranormal and UFOs, and so I'm really interested in your work, Steve.
Oh, right, thank you. I mean, it's certainly varied. You know, I'm always busy and all doing so many different things. It's difficult to juggle so many things, as Russell know, because he juggles a few things and all. But I deal with the paranormal. I started in ufology, basically, and as time goes on, you know, people are interested in the UFO side of things as well. So, and when they get into sort of the UFO subjects, you get fringe paranormal subjects overlapping. People wanted to know about paranormal things, and then of course I ended up into the paranormal field, and then parapsychology, and all rolled into one, to tell you the truth. So I pretty much investigate sort of all sorts of things now.
It's a natural progression, I think, yeah?
That's good, because, you know, over here in America, we have a lot of things that really cross over into two fields. For instance, we have the Brown Mountain Lights, which possibly could be UFO related, but it's also steeped in legend from hundreds of years ago, and so a lot of, you know, things do cross over like that. So that's really great that you can handle both things.
Yeah, it certainly is there.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
do you think the public, can you judge the interest that the public has right now? Do you think it's increased in paranormal stuff? You know, because there's a lot of Hollywood movies out, you know, with that kind of thing. Can you sort of judge the interest? Has it waned, or is it increasing?
Well, the paranormal subjects have certainly had an increase over the years due to the media. You know, the television programs that they pump out all the time, and of course the hit movies on the paranormal subject, which are just keep being made, and of course that spikes interest in the paranormal field. On the other side of the coin is that ufology is probably dropped somewhat. I mean, that is definitely media driven as well. I mean, I noticed a massive spike in people's interest in UFOs during the X-Files TV series, which hit the UK many years ago.
Golden years, Steve. I think that was the golden years of ufology.
I watched every single one of those things, probably twice. I loved it.
You and me too.
Yeah, well,
and they even based the Brown Mountain Lights. They even the X-Files even based a movie on you know, the Brown Mountain Lights. So that was sort of cool, since it's in my backyard, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough to meet the cast. They came over to the UK, and they did an X-Files convention, which I lectured at, and I got to meet them, and, you know, and I was quite surprised how small the game of Scully, should we say, Scully was. She's really small. She was only about 5'1", you know. Of course.
Wow.
Yeah. But she always looked taller on television. There must be those real big high heels.
It must be. I did hear that there's a possibility of another movie somewhere along the line, so that would be great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, it's like I say, these subjects are definitely media-driven in the newspapers, magazines, DVDs, hit films on the pictures, television series. Paranormal series, there's so many of them now. They're into the hundreds.
Yeah.
Each and every country is producing their own pretty much now.
Well, I have one question I just have to ask you, Steve.
All right.
Have you ever been on an investigation where you genuinely were afraid? And if you were, would you tell me about it?
Okay, all right. I'll have to sort of gear you into this one. I first came into the subject in 1983 after leaving school, simply because my father was an investigator of ufology, and I kind of took over from him, and I kind of adopted his books and got into different organisations. As time went on, the work I was doing in the establishments and organisations kind of led me to be rather sceptical. And, it's not something I often say, but yeah, I was very sceptical. And if I could rationalise the case, I damn well would. And I had done on many occasions, and been called for it, because there are devout believers out there in certain subjects. But like I say, without evidence, I can't draw conclusions for something to be positive or not. As time went on, I became involved in the paranormal side of things. Again, I have visited all the stately homes pretty much across the country, the castles, and then I got involved in residential investigations. And that is where, in the residential investigations, where properly introduced to probably what you might refer to as paranormal phenomena. The likelihood of witnessing things at alleged haunted locations across the country, like stately homes and castles, usually quite slim. But the chance factors involved in residential investigation more.
Icon, he's not with us yet.
Well, you know how Skype is. It has its good days and bad days.
Yeah, it looks like a bad day today at the moment. Hi, Steve.
Hiya.
Are we all together?
Yeah, was it my end it dropped out? I don't know what happened.
I think it might have, but it does anyway. It's just one of those things.
Well, I'm used to Skype calls, so I can just pick it up from where I left off. Yeah.
Right, so I was talking, talking about residential hauntings and
Yeah, I got involved in a poltergeist infestation report of it. It first appeared in Manchester Evening News regarding a family, the Garner family from Rochdale, which were experiencing unusual water formings which were taking place at their bungalow. So I visited the bungalow along with a team to investigate the phenomena. Very sceptical, as you can well imagine. You still there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
We're here.
Oh, you just because you've gone very quiet. Okay, just making sure. And what basically happened was that I experienced what I can only say is paranormal phenomena, poltergeist disturbances. I got thumped in the back actually, which wasn't very nice. But what was really interesting at the time, I was actually sat on the end of a bed with two other investigators, and we were just listening to the sounds of the house, the environment, because when you move into an environment and you're investigating, you're unaware of the normal sounds. So we're just trying to get a feel of what the place and the sounds are, the normal sounds. And we heard a deep breathing coming from behind us. And of course, either investigator looked at me, and because they didn't want to turn around, and I was, to be honest with you, I didn't really want to turn around myself. And at that point, just as my chin turned over to my right shoulder to turn round and find out where this noise was coming from, I don't know what happened really, it happened so fast, but I ended up hitting the wardrobe in front of me, which was about 4 feet away. And I felt this tremendous pain in my back. So, be honest with you, I ran. I just didn't...
Oh, wow.
And I ran into the lounge, the lights went on, the investigators were more interested in taking photographs of my back, which was coming up in a very large bruise. And then it was really, really strange because it was kind of a punch, an electric shock at the same time. Because I'm quite a big guy, and it takes a lot to sort of put me 4 foot across the room, and like an electric shock, it felt a bit like electric shock. And if anybody out there and our listeners have ever had an electric shock, they know that feeling of that repelling, that pushing feeling away, which what DC current does. And for me, it seemed like a punch, a physical punch, and an electric shock at the same time. That, believe it or not, that whole event in 1996 it kind of turned my world upside down regarding, because up till 1996, and I started in this subject in 83, I hadn't witnessed anything paranormal. I've witnessed UFO sightings, yeah, but I've never witnessed anything paranormal up to that time. And and then I had to sort of reevaluate. In fact, I was going to leave. I was going to change my profession because I just thought I don't want to do this anymore. But I think,
Gosh, I can understand. I mean, you never think about a poltergeist being aggressive, physically like that.
I know.
I would have run too, just for the record.
It was certainly startling, but I think the following day, the adrenaline had dropped, and I started thinking about, well, how can it do that, and what physical force how did he manufacture that physical force, and how did he cause water formings? Because we did have water formings taking place whilst we were there, and that was
Can
actually...
you describe that, Steve? Can you describe
it was absolutely remarkable. Now, I hadn't seen anything like this ever until I watched a television show come out from the States last year, and it was a TV series called Paranormal Witness. Now, there's an episode in that which was exactly the same sort of case where there was water formings. It involved a young lad who'd moved into a house with some foster parents, and the poltergeist disturbances peaked to a point where there was water formings. I saw Mr. Gardner sat in the kitchen with an umbrella up, and it was raining in the kitchen, and it's just quite profound to sort of say that. But the droplets were forming on the ceiling and falling down quite heavy, to the point where everything was getting soaked in the house. Everything had to go under plastic. The smell of sort of rotten carpet smell, when things get water damaged, and they were going through hell, this family. And the formings I saw, there was one in the hallway, which was the main incident, which we recorded and photographed at the time, and I was working with Jenny Randalls and Peter Huff at the time, and which are known, in the subject of UFOs and the paranormal for writers of books. And we watched this forming appear on the ceiling and move across the ceiling as if intelligently. No drops hit the floor. It was moving across the ceiling and arched around a light fitting. The only way I can describe it is if you turn the whole thing upside down, and imagine if you get a glass of water and you throw it across a kitchen floor, and you see that water spread out under movement. It was like that, but seeing it on the ceiling. And the most interesting part of that is that we took samples of it, and we also took controlled samples from old taps, and we sent them off to Northwest Water Laboratories. Now, what was really interesting is that water has a certain conductivity level. When we go and get a glass of water from the tap, it usually is around 93 UCSMs, which is it's harmless to us at that level. But the conductivity of this water on the ceiling was 1,723. It was electrically charged. Now, that led us to believe that possibly some type of poltergeist infestations, when they cause these manifestations, these water formings, and other different liquids, maybe we're dealing with an electrical phenomena which manifests these things. And it was truly profound, it really was. But it turned my life upside down, to be honest with you. And I did think about getting out of the subject when that happened. But it's kind of as the days went on, it was a bit of a buzz, if you understand what I'm saying. And I kind of got more involved, really, in the paranormal side. But I had loads of questions. So I ended up having to study psychology, and I went to university. And then I went on to do parapsychology courses, because I needed to find out, is it our perceptions, and can we experience things which we attribute to it ourselves psychologically?
So can I ask you something, Steve? What was the conclusion to this investigation then?
Well, we were asked to be involved in the case through Rochdale City Council, because like MAPIT does now, it doesn't really do the normal investigations like any other group in the country. We tend to work a lot for establishments and businesses and corporate companies, and we do a lot of confidential work. And we work for a lot of housing associations and city councils when they are claiming that people are reporting, or tenants are reporting, paranormal disturbances. They need some type of protocol, so they call us in, and we act as the investigators, and they're our clients, and we produce a document on our findings, which supports the evidence of relocation or not. In this case, we had plenty of evidence to suggest. We had a sit-down meeting at Rochdale City Council, and they decided to relocate the family. Now, the family were relocated, didn't really want to move. They'd lived in this bungalow for 14 years and were quite happy there. But they decided to be relocated into a 3-bedroom semi-detached house. And the disturbances carried on there for about 3.5 weeks at the other place, where we were called in again. But then it soon just sort of fizzled away after 3.5 weeks, and they haven't had disturbances since. Now, the building, the bungalow, was left what we refer to as fallow. In other words, it was left empty, with void of any electricity in the building for over a year. Hopefully that might diminish some form of paranormal phenomena, because there just seems to be an association with phenomena feeding off electrical systems. So it was left for over a year, and then it was reoccupied by a foreign family. And I went and had a chat with them, and they said everything was fine. So as far as I'm aware now, the gardener are living a normal and happy life. But for me, experiencing that, it was quite a shock to my system. And I've never really got over it, to tell you the truth. That feeling of being hit by something which you cannot see nor defend yourself against is quite an alarming thing, really.
Well, it is. I can remember when I was a child growing up, I saw one of those crazy clown movies where the clowns come back to life and try to get you. You wouldn't look in the closet, and you wouldn't look under your
But I've
bed.
been equally involved in the UFO phenomena as well. So I'm now getting into the parapsychology. Of course, I founded in 1996. I founded. It's a really strange story how these things came about, because in 1972, myself, my mother, and my father witnessed a UFO in the sky, a silver disc, which was. Lost it. Are we still there?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. My family and I witnessed a UFO in 1972. And since then, of course, we reported it to an organisation. Can you hear me okay, Deborah?
Yes, I can hear you good.
Okay, I think I initially lost Russ there for a minute. He'll pick it up in a second. And what we did is we reported it to an organisation at the time, which was MAPIT, which was Manchester's Aerial Phenomena Investigation Team, which was based in Stockport in the UK. And what happened then was the gentleman came out, which was the founder of the organisation, which was Dr. David Rees, and he interviewed myself and my mother and father regarding the UFO we saw in 1972. Now, just coincidentally, my father got into the UFO subject and was doing a little bit of investigating. He had numerous different books. And just coincidentally, around about 1980s, late 80s, I heard that Dr. David Rees had died. And I took over the MAPIT organisation, just coincidentally. So, and I've been running that. Now, the MAPIT was running since 1974, when initially just started investigating aerial phenomena, hence it was Manchester Aerial Phenomena Investigation Team. But as time's gone on, we've kept the name, the acronym MAPIT, but just changed the references to let people know that we deal obviously with paranormal phenomena and investigations as well now. And it's just it's very strange how all things came about. I opened up in 1996 the scientific establishment of parapsychology in Manchester, which is purely devised to investigate extrasensory perception and things of that nature, so we could deal with scientific establishments around the country, such as parapsychology departments. And getting into the parapsychology stuff as well led me into telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition. We've got a guy on board at the minute who's absolutely amazing regarding his precognitive abilities, and he's getting hit after hit, and he's quite alarming, to tell you the truth. And we're actually spreading the word around to different parapsychologists around the world, which are really, we're just trying to advance the subject. So I'm involved in all aspects of the strange, the weird, and the profound, and the 14. And really, I've even investigated black cat sightings for the police, the Greater Manchester Police, South Yorkshire Police, because people, there's nothing paranormal about them. They're just, cats living wildly. But we have a team of people which investigate paw print analysis and fur analysis and identification and all that sort of thing, which was a free service we offered to the police. So I kind of get involved in all sorts of things. So really, and of course running a magazine and writing books and freelance journalism and lecturing and tutoring, and it's just not enough hours in a day, unfortunately.
I was going to say, do you ever get to sleep any?
I've always got a book in my hand. I never stop learning. I've 31 years on now, and I'm still learning.
Well, it's good that you're doing something that interests you, and I find that when you do that, it's always fulfilling, even if you don't find all the answers. But I want to ask you, when you have an investigation concerning a poltergeist, and there may be something, happen, like, what had happened to you about, getting punched in the back, or if it's a family that, a lot of really, terrible things happen, that frighten everybody.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because of something really, a history of something violent happening in the home?
Well,
or is there other answers?
Okay, well, when you investigate enough of the paranormal disturbances, especially poltergeist infestations, now, if you look on the internet and you look on YouTube and other sites like that, people have us believe that poltergeist infestations are quite common, and in fact they're not. They're very, very rare. True poltergeist infestations are exceptionally rare. I've only investigated 4 cases in 31 years, compared to hundreds of alleged hauntings. And there is a significant difference. Now, what's really unusual about poltergeist infestations is that there's a rule book. They always tend to do certain things. There's a pattern of events. Poltergeist infestations start off with audible disturbances, which is like that low level, that first part of the activity. And then it goes on to, the object manipulation, things disappearing, things moving, stacking of objects, apports, asportations. And then it moves on in stages to the manifestation stage, such as people claiming to see amorphous shapes, apparitions, dark shadows, those sorts of things. And then even further on to physical manipulation, where people claim to have been punched, scratched, hair pulled, tapped, prodded, those sort of things. There is a further stage, but it starts getting a little bit dark then, when people start, were psychologically adversely affected by the phenomenon, and that takes us into a whole complete different realm. Heading into the supernatural, really, in parts of that. But
and is it like taken over as well?
Yeah. I mean, people can be completely, taken over and complete different. The lives can suddenly just take a down. And people have reported these things, and there always seems to be those stages of effect with poltergeist infestations. And the good thing is that we realised quite a number of years ago that poltergeist phenomena is driven by the emotion, stress and vexation from the people witnessing the phenomenon in the environment. So basically, if you remove the stress and emotion and the vexation from the environment, thus you decrease the phenomena to the point where you can actually control it. It's very, very difficult to control stress, emotion and vexation when people are witnessing things. But what poltergeist infestations tend to do, they create phenomena for the witness. They do not waste actions. Everything it's done is done for a reason, and the reason is to generate fear and vexation. So it feeds. They're like fear feeders. They feed off that emotion, the fear, the vexation, to generate the next event. Now, what we try and do is, it's a vicious circle that goes round and round, and we try and get into these places. We try and teach the people in that environment and let them know about the phenomenon, how it works, and hopefully try and decrease their stress and emotion. If we can do, and in some cases, minor cases, we have done so, they seem to see a significant drop in the disturbances, which reinforces the fact that they are under some control of it themselves. And basically, that's a headway to resolving the issue. As for haunting, they tend to be, these can last forever. People can move into an alleged haunting building, like catching a fly in a glass, and expect it to sort of end, and that is very difficult to deal with. But in poltergeist infestations, there's a definite rule book. They are intelligent, they can communicate, and like I say, they are very rare, so you don't hear of these cases very often.
Well, I will certainly think twice before I go into a dark house that is not inhabited, because I like doing that. I love going in old houses, but I'm going to be a little bit more careful now.
Well, I mean, most haunted, usually when it's poltergeist infestation, people have to be around. It's haunted people, in a sense of in regards to haunted locations, because in some cases people have moved from location to location, and the phenomena has followed them. Not like a haunting. And in many cases, they're usually very short-lived poltergeist disturbances.
Well, can I ask you, what actually brings it on in the first place, Steve?
Well, that's a really good question. Initially, if you do surveys, and the surveys have been carried out, but they're not documented very well because some people consider them a little bit, touching on certain issues. That can be in regards to financial difficulties, family issues. What we tend to find is people who have suffered from poltergeist infestations, the most credible ones ever documented, are from people from two different sources. One side of the coin is that they are deprived in some way, be it financially, or that they're having family issues, or there's some form of learning difficulty by people living in that environment. And generally, it's just not a good situation. And that amount of stress, vexation, and trouble is like switching on a light bulb outside, and sometimes it attracts them off. And I think these fear feeders, they attract themselves to locations where they can generate and obtain the most fear and vexation from. The other side of the coin, though, Russ, is simply that some people have really come under severe poltergeist infestations and disturbances because they have been, which is really interesting, they have been devout Catholics. Now, some people will suggest, certainly the Catholic Church will suggest that devout Catholics have the most severe of poltergeist disturbances simply because it's a test of their faith, and that poltergeist infestations target certain people because it's more rewarding, to kind of win a battle. But we're starting to get into that supernatural side of things and the demonology side of things, but dealing with poltergeist infestations, they are rare, and you find certain things as well. They are very, very particular about object manipulation. Now, what we found is that suddenly if an object is found to have moved from one place to another, we measure it. We measure the distance it's moved. And this is referred to as what we call the displacement effect. Now, the displacement effect can be numerous different, measurements. But say, for an example, 36 inches, and items move 36 inches. What you will find throughout that investigation, when other items have moved, that they tend to have moved 36 inches. They tend to be quite specific about their actions. When certain stacking or arranging of items, they're very precise at the way they angle things. Things are angled at 45 degrees. In one case, I had a set of pans that would often appear out the kitchen cupboard in the lounge every morning. And it was really interesting because you had 6 pans in a row. The handles were all facing at 45 degrees. In size order, and right at the front was a wok standing there like a sergeant major.
Wow.
It's just fascinating how they managed to do that. I mean, poltergeist infestation that took place in a South Yorkshire shop some years ago, and it seemed to like to play with the polo mints, and it stacked the polo mint tubes, which are these mints, on the side counter every morning. But not only were they all facing the same direction, even the name Polo on the actual wrapper was all facing in exactly the same direction. They are very, very precise in their actions. But what you will see on YouTube and things, there's a lot of deception going on out there about object manipulation. What we have found is that in most poltergeist cases, in about 99.9% of them, when moving objects, they tend to move them across, off the wall, downwards, sideways, but they don't tend to lift the items up because it's harder to sort of against gravity, so they don't waste energy. They'd rather fly something off the wall and down, or slide something across, as opposed to lifting anything. But you tend to see a lot of videos of all these sort of things flying up in the air, and I'm usually a bit suspicious of them.
So where would you say that these things actually come from, and what are they exactly?
Well, initially people thought they were spirits, talking 100 odd years ago. I mean, obviously the name comes from Germany, as in noisy ghost. Because they were referred to as noisy ghosts because the first and most prominent actions that they do is create audible disturbances, usually at night, usually when it's quiet, usually when you want to get some rest. Anything that causes you some sleep deprivation, anything that causes you some upset, some emotion. So they got referred to as that. But initially they thought they were spirits. That was kind of considered not the case during the 1940s. Because research pointed at the fact that they believed that these things were an entity and were in fact intelligent but hadn't lived before. They weren't a spirit, and they don't have a name, they don't have an identity. But of course they can manufacture one. If you think it's Uncle Albert haunting you, then you may see Uncle Albert haunting you. There was a really interesting case where a family, their daughter, aged 15, had disappeared. And she disappeared for 3.5 years. The family assumed that she'd died or been murdered or some terrible crime had been committed, and it went very quiet. But that whilst during this time, they started to have paranormal disturbances and poltergeist infestation type disturbances, and they thought that they were being haunted by their own daughter, who disappeared 3.5 years ago. And in fact, they believed it so much that on occasion they'd actually see the apparition of their own daughter, and it was reported quite well known. And it was quite surprising after about 4 years when there was a knock at the front door, and there was the daughter. She'd actually run away with an old boyfriend for 3.5 years. It didn't turn out, and she ended up coming back home. And I then kind of realised, well, hang on a second, how can you have an apparition of somebody who's alive? So there's theories drawn into the fact that maybe apparitions can be drawn, just like the Philip experiment, which was created many years ago, that we can manifest, these things can manifest as to what we think they might be. So they don't really have their own identity, which is referred to. Historically and biblically, they'll say that there's references to these disturbances in association to fallen angels. Angels which were cast from heaven, and these entities don't have a physical body. They've never lived as a physical person, and they attach themselves to certain people and families which are having problems, and they refer to them as fallen angels. But really, to be honest with you, Russ and Deborah, nobody really knows. To be honest, the research comes up with loads and loads of different theories, but nobody exactly knows where they actually come from.
Well, you mentioned the Catholic Church. Do people still have exorcisms? Do they get priests to come to their house if they think it's haunted? And does that really help?
Well, we found out, we did a survey in 1989, and it ran for about 5 years, and we found out through statistical analysis that only 12%, around about 12% of priests or vicars or reverends visiting homes and conducting these blessings and exorcisms were successful. Only 12%. Now, it's an absolute waste of time for them attending a poltergeist infestation, because it does not work. It won't work in regards, you putting up religious items or conducting certain biblical passages or anything of that sort. It might help in regarding hauntings and other incidents, but as a poltergeist infestation, they're absolutely useless at trying to relieve the family from those disturbances. They always tend to, one of two things happen: the family relocate, or the poltergeist infestation demises itself, such as after maybe 10 months or a year or so. But certainly, it doesn't seem to be beneficial, them dealing with poltergeist infestations.
That is interesting.
Mm.
Because we all saw The Exorcist. We saw The Haunting of Emily Rose. A lot of movies like this. They always call in the priest. So I didn't know at what time frame that they called an investigator like yourself. I mean, is it after everything else has failed, or do you usually get a call early on in investigations?
Well, both really. I mean, sometimes I've been called by a family which have literally gone through every source. They started off by talking to the family and friends. People gave them different theories and ideas. That puzzled them even further. And then they got a psychic or medium or clairvoyant in, usually probably not accredited through a parapsychology unit. And they tell them lots of different things, leading them to believe most of the time that it's a haunting, when in fact it's an infestation of poltergeist disturbances. In some cases, they've even gone further and rang the police, and the police didn't know how to deal with certain things. They don't have a protocol, obviously, with dealing with such matters. And even further on to getting vicars and priests to go in, and of course they've conducted prayer groups and they've done blessings with numerous different religious items to no avail with poltergeist disturbances. We have got calls after that's all happened, but we've also had calls when people have just reported some paranormal disturbances. They haven't identified really at this stage what's going on, and we await the stages, the routine. And it's very, very prominent in poltergeist infestations. They go through maybe from anything from 2 weeks to 4 months of audible disturbances, and then suddenly it starts to pick up by moving objects and things like that. It focuses on the larger items, the bigger capabilities, and of course we get called through all these different stages. So the first thing for us to do when we get there is to identify: is a real phenomena taking place? People can be misconstrued, they can be misidentified things. Our own psychology can manufacture hauntings and paranormal events. We did a social experiment in 1989 with 30 different students who studied psychology and paranormal phenomena, and we took them to a location, a big spooky house, in fact, we took them to, and we told them that it was very haunted. We told them about all these different events that had gone on there. In other words, we filled their heads with prior knowledge and expectation.
Right.
And we sat back and just watched the reports come in. They were there for 2 hours. We allowed them to go around on their own or in groups, and we asked them to fill out all these report forms if they had any experiences. Now, at the end of the night, the reports were fantastic. Some people reported being touched. Some people said that they'd seen apparitions. Some people said that they felt cold spots and all sorts of different things. And what was really interesting at the end of the night is when we switched the lights on, we told them that there's absolutely nothing paranormal going on in this building. And
did they get red faces?
Well, they did, yeah. And it just goes to show that the psychology of the mind can manufacture these things very, very easily. So when we go into these establishments, there's a lot of work to do psychologically to find out, are they attributing things to the phenomena? Is there rational explanations? And if we don't find a rational explanation, then we usually prefer, the extraordinary is usually the plausible approach. And if that's the case, then we have a protocol of how to deal with poltergeist infestations.
Back to, when you were talking about the church getting involved, I would say that I had an abduction scenario years ago, and my family actually thought it was ghosts.
Yeah.
At first, because of what I'd seen, etc. And they'd actually, through a friend and my sister, asked people to maybe come and... one of the guys was, a spiritual healer.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so he came to bless the house and what have you. My sister had spoken to this other chap from the church and asked if he could come and present. And she was so frightened of what had happened to me, she actually had said, the words exorcism. And as soon as the words, no, we don't do stuff like that. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually started making inquiries because, I was really, really scared myself, I'll be honest with you. And, the church, as in sort of like the, what do you call it now? I'm just trying to think of, I'd spoken to a couple of people, a priest and a vicar, and sort of like one were Catholic, and they said no, and especially if I wasn't going to the Catholic Church, and a vicar were from an apostolic, and they said we don't do stuff like that. So trying to get somebody to come and
it's true. It's very, very difficult, Russ. I mean, to start with, the abduction phenomena and the paranormal phenomena have a lot of similarities, especially in regards to bedroom visitations, paralysis, and all sorts of things, as you will know. And it becomes a very grey, to excuse the pun, a grey area. But the problem is that is finding the right people to do the job. And it's took us a long time to find those right people which are quite willing to help in an official capacity. Now, most Catholic churches won't get involved with an exorcism unless it's ordained from the Vatican with permission. So we don't tend to. But blessings do take place. Normal vicars from either Methodist Church to conduct blessings. There is a significant difference between an exorcism of somebody and a blessing of a property, but a lot of people kind of get mixed up over the difference between them. But we do find that we get a better response from the Methodist churches than we do the Catholic churches. You have to be very persistent with the Catholic Church, and they have to have absolute rock solid evidence of their involvement. And most establishments in this country are just not equipped to give them that evidence, unfortunately. So a lot of them are a little bit wary of being involved in certain cases which might not be exactly what is said to be.
Steve, what kind of equipment do you take along to get evidence of your investigations?
Well, initially, it's all report forms. Initially, it's all paperwork. I mean, it's not like... I wish it was like the X-Files, but unfortunately, you never saw them do much paperwork, those guys, did you? But most of our...
Never.
That'd be wonderful. You could just investigate all the time. But a lot of paperwork, psychological assessments, analysis, there's also psychoanalysis reports that are put together. We have to do all that first to work out that are we dealing with a phenomena or are we dealing with the actual a problem with the individuals. If it goes further, then on what we refer to as a warrant form, what warrant form is, it warrants an investigation or it doesn't, and we have to fill those sort of things out. We have 3 stages of investigation. The first stage is to go in and we do a complete breakdown of the environment. Everything's photographed and videoed from every single room. Is a 360 video taking place, just in case objects move or disappear, asportations or apportations happen. We can work out where those items were prior to on the video footage. Photographs by 6 or 7 different types of cameras are used, a whole range of different cameras. And also we do we have some come out, and it doesn't matter if they've recently gone through an electrical test on their building or not. We have some come out and conduct a thorough electrical test on the building, looking for leakages, looking for bonding problems, looking for EMF fluctuations, all sorts of things. And then we start to look at the environment. Stage 2 of the investigation is looking at the environment, looking to see if there's any underground water, lays come into it, power stations, overhead pylons, sub-generators, anything that might generate some type of electromagnetic field, be it geomagnetic, natural, or EMF, which is produced by technology, from both different sources, which might adversely affect the perception and the emotions of the witnesses in that environment. After which, we do stage 3. Now, stage 3 is when all the other equipment comes in. And now we can split that into Section A and Section B. Section A is that when sometimes equipment goes in and it's called, we refer to it as blanket monitoring, where we're not nobody is in that environment whatsoever, no human agencies whatsoever. So you're just monitoring an environment. Or it's a hands-on. There's agencies in there, such as our investigators, maybe some of the witnesses, the family, and so on and so forth. If they are experiencing disturbances on a normal general day whilst they're going about the business, then we like to have them go about the normal business so we don't change too much out in the environment, because we do want to capture things, we want to find evidence, And we bring in we do all the normal things, you EMF meters and geomagnetic meters, magnetometers, we use flux meters, we use iron air counters, negative air counters, all sorts of different things. And we do a full sweep and a report on all those sort of things as well. Now, in some cases, some people will argue the point that bringing in a lot of equipment can subdue paranormal phenomena. But the thing is that for us, we have to find evidence. There's no point in us just sat there holding hands and thinking, well, if I've seen this and someone's heard that, that's not evidence. We need to find evidence, because we never know if something's going to happen where it's going to require further assistance by other officialdoms. And for that reason alone, if they're going to be involved, we're going to have to provide evidence. So we have to take in as much equipment as possible. And that can be over a duration of time. It depends on what we obtain.
May I ask you, when you photograph things with like a camera, do you use a different kind of lens, an ultraviolet lens? And have you ever captured like an image that you weren't really sure what it was?
Well, we've captured lots of different images over the years. We use every typical type of camera you can consider, from the old 110 side cameras right through to the SLR cameras, to the digital cameras, to the full spectrum cameras, and even with something referred to as a stroboscopic camera, which takes photographs during strobe lighting for different reasons. We also take photographs through what you call a laser meshes, which can point out slight anomalies, at the slightest anomalies, even if it's an inch across, so we do have some very precise, ways of dealing with photography. But of course there's numerous different ways of videoing as well nowadays as well, so some of the photographs that we've obtained over the years, some of them, lots of them have rational explanations, such as the typical orb phenomena, which some people refer to. 99.9% of the time, it's dust orbs which are photographed right in front of the camera, right at the lens. Which, when it's always interesting. I always say to people when they catch these things, do you capture them without the flash on? Because 99% of the time, it's the flash illuminating dust particles, pollen, moisture, rain, all sorts of things in the atmosphere that human eye's not seeing, but the flash illuminates right in front of the camera lens, and thus putting it onto the film or the camera image. And people seeing balls of light and things like that. I often ask the question, did you see them? And most of the replies are usually no, which is usually an indicator. However, and this is I always say however, there is an orb phenomena, a ball of light phenomena associated with the paranormal disturbances, where people have seen them and photographed them. I do have some photographs that have been submitted to me through Parapsychology unit in America, and they show balls of light which are so bright that they actually illuminate the carpet, below.
Wow.
So these things are seen, but quite rarely. But 99% of the time, we get about 6,000 photographs a year, and I have to look through them and try and, I try my best to rationalise them, even though that, it's all down to resources at the end of the day. But some of them are interesting. Most of them are rational explanations. The unfortunate.
Stephen, can I just, because I don't want to pick turn.
Yeah.
Talking about, I've filmed something that actually, like ball objects, not orbs, but like ball objects, actually, when I'm filming, and it had the night vision on, right, yeah? And the thing is, I had an object come down out of the sky and come down like to my legs and then come back up. Now I could feel my legs and my body, like something coming up me, if you see what I mean. Yeah. But you can actually see 5 ball objects moving in a line, coming down and back up in front of the camera where I'm filming. Now I know I had the night vision on, right? Yeah, but the thing is, I was already filming a UFO in the sky, and I wish now I'd have left it where it was, but I handed the camera to a colleague of mine, and to show him, like the UFO in the sky, and when I'm feeling something coming down. That's when I said, oh, there's a camera back a minute. And as I'm putting the camera back up to film, you can see something coming down from the sky, though.
Yeah.
Before quite strange.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because we know that obviously from over the years of investigating that the UFO phenomena is anything from a small ball of ping pong size or even smaller to huge objects which are seen. It's unidentified, it's flying, and it's an object. But we've also realised since 1995 or 96 that some of these things can be caught in the infrared, simply through experiments with a standard video camera and an infrared video camera, and the infrared capturing something, a light in the sky, and the standard camera not. You've probably seen footage like that around, haven't you? Probably on YouTube. And the thing is that we do know that sometimes these things are caught in the infrared, and not visible with the naked eye. But I think there are lots of things in our environment that we're just completely unaware of. I mean, human perception is, believe it or not, human perception is extremely, extremely low. We have one of the lowest human perception is one of the lowest on the planet of any living animal. Because most animals can see better and hear better, have a better range of sight, and even seeing in the dark to some degree. We are very poor at dealing with sorts of things like that, and we have to rely now on technology to help us sort of look at a wider range of the spectrum, and also.
Is that because of our environment changing, though? Like from, initially, campfires and going out in hunting.
Well,
with all life.
Yeah, I know where you're coming with this. The actual bottom line, if you want my personal opinion, because I have a professional opinion and a personal opinion. The professional opinion will say, yes, you're right on that one, Chris. Right, definitely right on that one. What I would say personally is that humans are completely useless at adapting and living on the planet Earth. We just don't. It's as if like we're not from here. We're just useless. We can't survive in heat. We can't survive in the cold. We don't have enough hair on our bodies. Hair completely keeps growing, not like monkeys do. Our nails keep growing, not like monkeys do. They can swallow and breathe at the same time. We can't. We'd choke to death. They can see in the dark. We can't. If we've evolved from monkeys, then we've devolved, should we say. We should be better than them. So the question is, are we good at living in this environment? Or every other animal seems to be better than we are, and we're supposed to be at the top of the chain.
Well, it is interesting how, over the years technology has changed when it comes to photographing UFOs. And I'm glad you mentioned the infrared, because Chile just released a lot of pictures of UFOs that they, basically they said they used infrared to get pictures of invisible UFOs that showed up on radar, but it was in broad daylight and you couldn't see anything. So there definitely is a interdimensional world out there where, things that humans can't see. And, possibly, maybe animals and different things can see those things that we can't. But it's definitely interesting that our environment has such secrets from us.
It certainly does.
I think
have a lot of limitations.
There's a good school of thought that says, obviously you don't use your night vision in daytime, it's, otherwise you're going to burn your lens out and everything. But there's an alternative, because some people think that these objects can be seen in a different spectrum, like ultraviolet. So I know that we was looking at experimenting getting, a gel for the lens and using ultraviolet lenses or gels and what have you. Having said that, the thing is, sometimes there's that much going on, and I've got that many cameras here, and sort of like, when I go out, I don't really need anything else than my camera. I was just asked, actually, to ask you, can you ask Steve if... Can you ask
Deborah Jane East. Be sure you listen to part 2 of this broadcast with Steve Mera.
Steve, to relay the story about how he was scanned by a UFO, by a laser beam.
Oh, I want to hear that.
It happened it was all over very quickly. It was just a flash. There was a flash of light, which it was like a circle of light. I was actually in the car. I wasn't travelling actually. I was stationary in the car, and I was just leaving my mother and father's. And there was a flash of light, and it seemed to just encompass the vehicle that I was in, and it was on for just about less than a second, but enough for us. I wasn't in the vehicle on my own either, so it was enough just to see. But it was definitely like like a beam, but it was certainly a concentrated beam. But it wasn't like, how can I describe it? What it was like was, you know, when you light a torch, when you turn the torch on, the beam gets bigger as you go further away. It wasn't like that. It was as if it was all the same size, and it was very, very strange. Of course, I jumped straight out of the car when I'm looking around the sky, but it was. I've never had that experience before. It was really, really odd. I don't know what it was all about. There was no police helicopters or anything up there, so it was a bit strange.
Did it come in the car, or did it go out of the car?
It just like flashed and it lit up the inside of the car, but and it was a brilliant light, an absolute brilliant light, just like a lightning strike, really. But it wasn't a lightning strike. It was a relatively clear night.
And how big was it?
Well, it came at an angle, definitely an angle, because we saw a beam coming down. When it flashed, there's only so much you can take in, and when it happened, your eyesight suddenly takes in the fact that you initially saw a flash of a bar of light that seemed to come out of the sky at an angle at you, which had just caught out of the windscreen part of it, hit the ground, which is within 3 feet around my vehicle and the vehicle. It lit up the inside of the vehicle, and it was all over within a second. There was no noise, there was no heat, there was no tingling sensation, there was absolutely nothing out of the norm apart from the light.
There was no time loss or anything on your part?
Absolutely none, no, and no vehicle effects, nothing. I looked up in the sky, there was no helicopters, there was a plane around about, a high altitude aircraft around about 32,000 feet, which was travelling in a southwesterly direction. You couldn't hear it, but you could see its navigation lights at high altitude. But that was it. That was all around. Very odd. I really don't know how to explain that one.
Wow.
Well, I have heard of other sightings of UFOs, and they say that there was a projected beam shining down from the UFO on the ground as if it was scanning for something.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is the question is that why do people who are interested in UFOs have experiences? I've questioned this one quite a lot, because it's an interesting theory. Why should it be me and not somebody else? You know, it's an experience that I really can't rationalise. I don't know, nor do I have it.
In my experience interviewing people for my radio show, I have found just about every single one of them have an interest in UFOs because, number one, including myself, they had a experience with seeing a UFO early in life, or their family had an experience about UFOs. And usually, you know, those two reasons are the majority of why most of the people I interview, you know, are studying UFOs and becoming investigators and writing books. It's because something happened to them.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember, obviously, I had my experience when I was young with my family in 1972. But
see, there you go.
But since then, what's really been really unusual is the amount of sightings I've actually had. I mean, is it just simply because we look more, or is it just because, you know, there is some connection between the viewer and the object? I really don't know. I mean, I've seen. I don't have to travel to the remote parts of this country and these alleged UFO hotspot areas. I simply go and stand in my back garden. You know, I mean.
Oh my gosh, you're just like Russ. He can just go out in his backyard and see UFOs. I honestly think it's because there is a connection. There's a reason.
I probably I've asked this question many a times and tried to analyse it, and I really don't know. But it's by chance factors, because being a parapsychologist, I've worked on chance factors many times, and chances alone that I shouldn't have had as many experiences seeing these things in the sky as I do. I mean, I've seen dish-shaped objects, I've seen balls of light, I've even seen the flying triangle, which was completely silent, void of any noise, which was really strange. It was like watching a car go past, which doesn't make any sound. It was just very, very weird. And most of these experiences happened on the doorstep of Manchester International Airport in the UK, where their radar systems must pick half of these things up. I'm sure they must do. And, I rarely do I visit UFO hotspot areas because I go away to Wales on holiday, and whilst I'm at the caravan, I'm pointing something out to my dad, and we both see it. And that's happened 3 or 4 times whilst I've been there. And I've visited different locations, and I've said to people, if you hang around with me long enough, you'll see something, and it simply is that way, and it's probably the same for us, actually.
Well, I honestly believe that it tends to follow families, because you said that you saw a UFO with your family. I saw a UFO with my family. I think they sort of follow certain people. I've just always had that concept in my head that there is a reason why, one individual usually has more sightings than other people. It's because they're following the family. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a valued opinion. What do you think, Russ?
Well, to be quite honest, I had an experience when I was younger with a group of my school friends and the friends that lived in the same street playing tin can squat.
Oh yeah.
And sort of like that always stayed with me, if you see what I mean. That always stayed with me, and sort of like I did when I was younger get involved, and I went to my first UFO talk. I was just 15, and sort of like, but when we went to the talk and what have you, it was one of these things where it wasn't for me. It was more about money, sort of like selling. How can I put it? Selling documents, and that was about 1979, and I'd asked questions, and we were more or less told to shut up because we were young, and it was more like, if you can spend a tenner and join the group, we'll tell you things. And I thought,
exactly.
Oh, okay then. That put me off. Say again, sorry.
I'm saying it shouldn't be like that, Russ. I mean, that's why I distribute all the information I have. Everything is free. Everything goes out. The idea is...
No, well, I mean, this is it. But I mean, obviously, it wasn't until I was... Hello? Are you there, Steve?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. I'm saying that, it wasn't until later on, until I had a scooter, and I would ride around on a scooter, then a motorbike, that, I've been missing time, and, sort of like disappearing down these tunnels and what have you, and then sort of like having, meetings with people in these circular, rooms with checkerboard floors with these knights, and then these shadow people walking through my bedroom wall. It wasn't until I was like 25 around that area that all this lot started happening, if you see what I mean.
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, like I say, when you've had personal experiences, that those things were real for you and were real for me. Explaining that to people who have never had experiences is difficult. People who have seen UFOs, it's come to a point now where it's next to impossible to identify what's in the sky, because with the technology that we've got and the technology that we don't know we've got, it's become a real problem. Many years ago, it was a lot easier because we didn't, we assumed we didn't have the technology years and years back, which could be misidentified as UFOs. It would be great if we could go back in time like that, because anything that we would have seen in the sky would have been something unusual. But nowadays, it's next to impossible. I mean, people often ask me, report UFO sightings. The most of the experiences that people have are they've seen a bright light in the sky. It's either hovered or it's had on some unusual colour. But where do we go with that? I mean, you must know, as I do, that it's very, very difficult finding the answers.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, over the years, yeah, we can look at maybe technology changing, you know. But the thing is, I've got a briefcase full of video footage that I videoed, and one or two of my friends and colleagues have videoed. And, you know, we're looking at objects that are in the sky for an hour, and there's dogfights, and there's two objects knocking the hell out of each other, ramming each other into the sky. A ball craft and a black triangle comes out of a cloud, and then this is going on for an hour, and then finally, when this ball comes out of the sky and coming down to like land, what happens is that there's like 7 missiles show up at this actual object. So I mean, you know, the thing is, if we're talking about it's our technology, right? Yeah. Well, what is our technology, you know, doing, you know, sort of like dogfighting over the skies of sort of like northeast Yorkshire?
Yeah, I know.
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. I mean, the first time I came across, I mean, you know, lots of people film things like this in the sky, usually in the infrared realm, at night. Ed Grimsley, a gentleman who did some video filming. He released a DVD called Night Vision UFO Wars, very similar type of thing that Russ has got, obviously, on film. The simple thing is, I think, Russ, is the fact that, you know, if we see an unusual craft in the sky, we don't know its origin. Not now, we don't, because I think we do have the capabilities, you know, to match some of these things that have been seen.
Definitely.
So if it's ours or theirs is a difficult question. But I believe there's a true phenomena that's taking place, and of course, you know, I think there's obviously might even be a secret war going on. I mean, there's been many. I've really done a heavy lot of research over the years in regards, you know, secret programs and of course the possibility of these interstellar craft that we might have, about like the TR-3B and the ones that we don't know of, which would have their capabilities of pursuing and defending Earth, in a sense speaking, probably under the new flag, isn't there, in the US government, which is I think it's Air Force Space Command. And I think on last year they had a conference, and they stipulated that 472 billion wasn't enough for the year program. I also am aware about the NSA, which have, you know, lots of strange and wonderful stuff in orbit, satellite dishes and all sorts of things, which are absolutely immense, because we haven't having to problem dealing with gravity so much up there. These things can unfold to a huge size. You know, that's a big problem for us now with the technology era, as to where these things come from and who do they belong to. But people still have those experiences which certainly identify themselves as being extraterrestrial in origin. So the question is still, you know, goes around the world in every country, that some people are seeing UFOs, which some of them might be ours, but people are having further experiences which indicate extraterrestrial contact.
Well, I know in the 90s, my son, him and his father were coming home from a visit to town, and they pulled in the driveway so excited and said there is a huge triangle-shaped UFO just up the road. And my son was just really beside himself. He said, I could see windows. And so I went back up there, and he said it had passed over the highway, over their truck, to a patch of trees about 800 feet away from where they were at, and he said it hovered for 2 or 3 minutes. Well, by the time I got up there, it was higher up in the sky, and there were 2 other objects beside of it. And we followed it for about a mile on the road until it disappeared. Well, my question is, if something like this belonged to our government, you know, and they wanted to keep it secret, then why in the heck would they fly so low where you could see it?
Yeah.
And have such visibility, and, you know, it moves slowly for a mile or 2. So, you know, it just makes you wonder.
Yeah,
the
I
other
mean,
thing is,
go on.
Steve, is this, right, yeah? What are they doing landing? I mean, I worked on a case which is the Berwyn Mountains for 20 years, and I had I've got a piece of metal right here at the side of me, which was supposed to come from the crash, which looks like a piece that I've seen from the Rendlesham. You know, talking to 5 witnesses that say it were a flying saucer, there were aliens, and we got marched away by the army, etc. You know, we've got technology that's not only flying, that it's occasionally, by the looks of things, being shot down. Yeah. And then the ones that aren't shot down seem to be landing and taking people. I know myself, I've had these things, you know, like I say, I've ended up in a circular room, I don't know how many times, being taken away by these, what I call shadow warriors, put into a military unit and taken, and that's, I live on one of those, I have lived on one of their bases. And people are saying, well, how can you say that? I know that a lot of this seems to be like time orientated, which means that if they take me for 2 hours, I might have lived there maybe 2 years. Because and this is what people don't seem to realise. They're not only coming here and sort of like they're actually taking people. You know, there's a lot more going on than I think people actually give credit to.
Oh yeah.
Well, I do think they can manipulate time, because many people that I've interviewed that were abducted, they say, well, you know, I was in the ship for hours, but when I got back, it was only like 45 minutes or, you know, an hour later. So that certainly is a concept that they might be able to do.
Well, with us, it's years, because, I mean, I can tell you, I've lived in a base, I can describe the base, I can tell you exactly what it looks like, the creatures that take us, what I call shadow warriors, shadow soldiers. There's 3 different types. There's a 6-foot alien types. They're all bald, but they're like degrees of height. 6 foot, one's 10 foot, and the giants, the monsters, are like 15 foot. They're just unbelievable.
Right. I mean, you see, I mean, lots of people have these sort of unusual experiences where time is certainly disorientated for them somehow in the physical sense. Unless we're dealing with something interdimensional, you know, and that can open up a whole different ball of theories.
Well, you've just. I mean, the thing is, the thing is though, when we say interdimensional, that's as hard, I suppose, to believe as somebody saying alien, as in, you know, it's the same kind of thing. One's as ludicrous as the other. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know,
and I'm one that's been taken, and I'm saying that. You know what I mean?
We've just not got the answers, Ross. This is the problem. We've got all these different theories. We haven't got the answers. Somebody out there has probably got a lot more answers than we have. I mean, we know that from back from the 1940s when these UFOs were flying around the States. You know, they realised that they actually brought some down accidentally by high-powered, radar systems. So what did they do? They pointed at them and whacked up the power, you know, bringing these things down as best as they probably could. Nowadays, I think that they've kind of clicked on a little bit, you know, and I think even though that the UFO phenomena has been with us forever, which is demonstrated in art and tapestry and cave drawings and all sorts of things all over the world, the phenomena really, the visual phenomena hasn't changed so much, but I think these capabilities have certainly helped.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at the case, the Berwyn Mountains, some very strange things there that night going on, and I know that I've got these maps here, and it does mention satellites.
Yeah.
So, you know, things were going on with satellites, so that's making you wonder, well, are the satellites sort of like making it easier for us to see these things? Yeah, which I'm beginning to wonder.
Yeah. I think you'd be probably surprised what's probably in orbit. And I did some research some years back and found official documentation that a general, can't remember his name off my heart, but in 1965 the first weapons satellite was actually launched. It was part of the Project Blue Fly, Project project. There was Blue Fly, Gemini, and Moondust, I think it was, and they're all part and parcel. One of them was a weapons satellite to bring fire on foreign objects and bring them down to ground. The next project was to retrieve the object, and the third project was to back engineer it. So, of course, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and these projects are all quite heavily involved around about the latter 1960s. Nowadays, when we say that the Star Wars weapons system didn't achieve its manufacture due to lack of funding under the Reagan administration, I don't believe that's true whatsoever. I think that they've got a lot out there that we just simply would not have a clue about. I mean, we've seen all the STS footage mission videos of these UFOs in orbit filmed by NASA, the shuttles that have been up there. And right back to some of the earlier ones, like the Gemini missions and the Mercury missions and things like that. So we are aware, that there are some strange things. It's a very busy place out there in orbit and space.
But do you think that would actually, and this is something that I cannot believe, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you believe that NASA would leave their footage on the internet and have it beamed around for people to sort of like download and put up on YouTube and what have you? Do you think that they're so stupid that they'd let that happen?
No, I don't think they're stupid at all that they let it happen, but I believe that they might let it happen through the drip feed process. Because you've got to understand, when we had a Roswell incident back in 1947, and other incidents similar to that, that was at a time when the military height was large. People had respect for the military. People had respect for the government. People now do not have any respect for the government or militaries around this world.
You're right.
If an incident, Roswell, was to happen again, it would be out in the world, out of the bag. Everybody would be filming it. It'd be up on YouTube in 5 minutes. It just simply would not be able to coerce people to keep quiet now. Now, they've got to obviously wonder and worry at the fact is that if an incident like that is to happen again, how the hell are they going to keep it quiet? How are they going to be able to keep control of it? Well, probably some big heads got together at some stage and realised when they did some testing that the best way to actually prepare the public is to let them figure it out themselves, because then the government aren't responsible for telling us. And that drip feed process, I believe, has been going on for a long, long time. It's been introduced into TV shows, kids' programs, cereal bars, sweets, comics, cartoons, absolutely everywhere. You cannot get away from it. Even now, as we speak, they've been performing UFO crash test sites in schools around the UK. They've been doing it for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Have you seen it? They've done 7 schools so far in the UK and planning to do more later in September. Now, the question is why are they doing this? Why do they want to keep this information flowing? And I think this drip feed process is that eventually, if something should happen, then at least public are going to just go kind of, hopefully, shrug their shoulders and say, well, we kind of pretty much knew that anyway. The shock, the surprise and all those sort of things they wouldn't have to deal with. This drip feed process, I think, is something that's been going on for quite some time. They've certainly turned the tap a little bit faster now, because you can't turn your head in any direction nowadays without seeing a stereotypical image of an alien or a UFO. It's just absolutely impossible. So it's certainly drilled into us, Russ, that the existence of such things is very feasible.
Well, since they had the citizens hearing for disclosure, and astronaut Edgar Mitchell testified, and Paul Hellyer testified, that aliens, extraterrestrials do exist. I mean, Gordon Cooper, another astronaut who passed away, said every day there are unidentified objects that come into our atmosphere, and they know about it.
Yeah.
And, the latest YouTube video from Dr. Mitchell, I mean, he says, yes, there are extraterrestrials, and I'm thinking, well, what does the government think about its own, coming before a committee and testifying? I give Dr. Mitchell the utmost respect, and, I wish more would come out and I'm sure there's many more, but under threat, that can't, tell what they know.
Well, unfortunately, we do hear a lot of deathbed confessions nowadays, and more coming forward, and we will have further more to come, because of other incidents, and people are just simply too scared. The threats of certain things, they just don't want to come forward and talk until they get to a point where they think that they've got nothing to lose in the first place. And that is when we tend to get a lot of information. Unfortunately, sometimes it's a little bit late, because as we get further and further away from the cases and the original date, that raw information is lost, unfortunately, and it gets clouded in time. But the significant thing about the drip feed process is that, it's actually part of it's the national curriculum from 9 to 13-year-old now in the UK, that they learn about UFOs, they learn about aliens, and it's not just the UK. I've got a family who live in Australia, in Brisbane, and at the same time, they were introduced to the same programs in the school, teaching the kids about UFOs and aliens. Now, one must ask the question, when we're paying, some of these schools are privately funded, when we're paying for our children to understand and learn about these things, why is the question? What's the feasibility behind it? Is there some reasoning? Is it something to do with potential future? I think the world is preparing slowly, and more countries are releasing UFO information, even if it's, like the Ministry of Defence in this country, in the UK, claim to have released all their documents. That's absolute rubbish.
It is rubbish.
All they want to do is to be looked upon to be transparent and open, when in fact they're doing the complete opposite. They released handfuls of information which is absolutely no good to us. It sparks some media interest for a very short time. It's most of the information we're currently already aware about. I mean, I've submitted to our own UK government absolutely huge, significant cases where, for instance, one in 1998, which involved 7 police officers and 26 witnesses of 2 flying triangles over Stretford, Manchester. And the whole reports, photographs, and all sorts of things were all sent to the Ministry of Defence. It was never released. It was never in the MOD file. So I know that they're holding back, and they obviously have good reason to do so, because they want us to be seen that they're helpful, and that they know that there's a possibility of an unidentified object. They might not, all they're interested in is if they have a national security risk or not. Well, that's absolutely rubbish, because how do you know if something has national security risk or not if you don't identify it as unidentified in the first place?
Well, talking about Roswell, if all of everything that we've heard about Roswell is true, and they were studying the technology, the reverse engineering of the ships and everything, it would seem to me that, just speaking for the United States, that they're just interested in the technology and the race to be the first to get this, for their own use. I mean, why else would they want to keep things secret? I mean, they had a lot of scientists and different people studying those things, and I, for one, believe Bob Lazar. He has never changed his story.
Yeah.
So I think it's technology. I think they're interested, and it seems like over the last 50 years there has been significant discoveries. Fiber optics, lasers, a lot of different things. It seems like, a quick advancement. So that's just my opinion, that they're interested in the technology of extraterrestrials.
Yeah, I mean,
I've got something here. Aliens invade Warminster. This was 2012, and it's a Warminster Journal from the Wills.
Oh, yeah.
About the children at school, and it shows you, there's some photographs of a crashed spacecraft. It looks like some kind of taking statements, like an officer, and then somebody wearing protective clothing, showing aliens.
Yeah.
So that is at school. So yeah, it is happening.
It is happening. It's happening, and it's happening. It's happening more and more common, not just in this country, it's happening elsewhere as well. But what's really interesting about that is that they actually used proper policemen, proper fire brigades, and a proper protocol to how to deal and how to keep away from radiation. Now, where's all that come from? In fact, if Deborah, I mean, she's, you know, from the US, if she actually checked the fire regulation manual, which is the fire, you know, if you want to be a fireman in the US, you have this Bible, right? And chapter 13 of that tells you how to deal with the public regarding a crashed UFO incident, how to keep them away, how to control the environment. All these things are in that official document. You know, these things are around. You've got to dig deep for them. But the things are surfacing slowly. The drip feed picks up, and it's slowly. Things are getting into the mainstream. I mean, years ago, before I got involved in a lot of this, I worked for NATO as a telecommunications officer, RAF Weatherfields in Essex, which was a NATO base. And I had a high clearance to deal with the telecommunication systems. And on those racking systems, when I was plugging in, now we're talking 27, 28 years ago, when I was plugging those computer boards in, they didn't have memory chips on them like we see in PC computers. They had liquid in them. It was pink coloured, it was liquid, and it was a liquid memory cell. Now I remember leaving NATO a year or two after that, and talking about it and saying, look, you know, it's going to be in the public domain soon. You know, these microchips and things like that, they're going to be disappearing. We're not going to have memory chips like that. We're going to have liquid crystal memory chips, which is a pink liquid. And I expected to see them, and I haven't seen them. And it was only about last month when IBM in America announced that these liquid crystal plasma crystals, which are liquid form, pink coloured as well, are going to be introduced to computer boards. Now we're talking nearly 30 years in difference here. The military establishments have these things long before they get into the public domain, but they do creep in eventually. So they are 50, 60 years in it. That's only telecommunications. You know, they must be really, really advanced in some of the things that they've got, but they don't get into the public domain for a long time.
Well, I have to agree with you. I read an article the other day where scientists have learned to manipulate DNA and said they successfully did that in a laboratory, and also that there's a group of scientists working on teleportation, you know, just like from Star Wars, you know, being able to transfer an object from one area to another.
Yeah,
and
right.
So there's a lot of stuff out there we just get a snippet about, but they're working on it. In some cases, they probably are in the process of perfecting it without the public's knowledge.
Well, that's what I was talking about earlier when I was telling you that when I'd been taken, you know, sort of like, forget about the spaceships, you know, forget about, you know, the beams of light and what have you from, you know, creatures from Zeta Reticuli and what have you. You know, sort of like, what happens to us is sort of like far more sort of like crazier in some ways, but yet it's more practical. I mean, I'm talking about being taken. When I'm taken, when these things, you know, they decide that they want me back again, you know, sort of like there's two balls of light, and we travel with these two balls of light, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, it's sort of like, I mean, from there, A to B, A to Z, in seconds.
Mm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sort of like, it is just an unbelievable transformation from being one place 1 minute and then somewhere else in a time as well.
Yeah.
So it depends wherever they want to take us.
Yeah.
So the thing is, you know, like, this may sound crazy, you know what I mean? But the thing is, no matter what anybody says, right, yeah, I know this is true, but what is behind it? And I'll tell you now, you know, and you hit upon this earlier, and you says they're in the race to find this technology. It's not the technology. What it is, who has that power.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's what you've got to remember. The ones that have this technology and super technology have better power.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Unfortunately, we live in a very corrupt and greedy world.
and I don't really know what we can do about it. I mean, one of the methods that the military... Are you still there?
I am, Deborah, yeah.
Oh, okay, I think we lost Russ, but I know we're still recording. But what I was saying is I think that, the military, one tactic they use is they compartmentalize information and just let small groups of people know about it, but just the task at hand. And so I think maybe aliens might be using the same thing. They are compartmentalizing, just using small groups of people for, their testing, or you hear about, they did tests and different things like that. So, I'm afraid it might be some of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that compartmentalization that they have is through every single military establishment, not just the US, also in the UK. Because I even noticed when I was working back at NATO that I wasn't to talk about the work that I did. But the guy who I did work with, who was on separate projects, he wouldn't talk to me about these things. And it was just profound. Why can't we talk about it? He's working the same facility I'm working at, maybe in a different part, but, and we're all working for the same team. But even to that level, just on telecommunications, there was compartmentalization where you just wouldn't talk to each other about the specifics of what job you're actually doing. So you get a very vague idea. It's a piece of the puzzle. You don't get to see the full image.
Exactly right, because they're afraid that you'll put it all together. And if you know exactly, what's going on, maybe you wouldn't like it, or you wouldn't want to be a part of it. I certainly think that could be one reason why.
It certainly could. I think that's definitely the picture. I think people can't put it all together. I mean, occasionally something happens where people get to find out something they shouldn't do, and usually that ends up coming out to the public on some occasions, which we're lucky about. But there must be a lot of information out there. And you've got to consider, if we are having these world events, and it's not, it is throughout the whole world, then how many people are involved and know about certain things? There must be an absolutely incredible amount of people on this planet that are aware of things that we can't, which is just so profound, because they're working in certain establishments, or they're working for the military, or they're working in some parts of covert governments that are aware of that information. But, very, very slowly you get these little drip feeds coming out, but not enough tangible, sudden impact. Because I think some people will suffer from that impact, especially religion and economy. I mean, obviously those are the two major roles that come to play regarding such issues. But even in religious context, it wasn't that long ago when the last Pope, visited the UK, and his spokesman from the Vatican announced the fact that ETs might be very much real, and their way of dealing with that was to consider the fact that God made them as well, and they're our space brothers. So, even they are getting in on the act.
Yeah, it looks like it. But, talking about all the people who know this information, and, they used to sign a 10-10-10, which was 10 years imprisonment, $10,000 fine, and I forget what the last one was, but these people were afraid unto death. And when I watched a documentary about Area 51, it said that a lot of the people that go in, or they used to, I don't know if they do now, but they would weigh them when they went in and weigh them when they went out to be sure they didn't confiscate material or take pictures or, take their cameras in. So I'm thinking, just why in the world would you do that unless there is incredible, amazing technology going on in there?
Well,
there has to be.
Yeah. Some people have reported over the years that they do or have been back engineering ET technology for quite some time and introducing it into secret aircraft. I mean, there's even word that the B-2 stealth bomber, which when it was first manufactured, they messed up the paint on it, and they ended up spending another $2.5 billion because it didn't radar reflect enough. But they managed to sort that out. But people have questioned, the way it takes off and how it lifts so sufficiently off the ground. Some people suggested, and found evidence to point the fact that some of this ET technology is introduced into the stealth program, and in fact that the B-2 bomber itself generates an electric field around its wings. And anybody who's done sort of electrical engineering will realise that if you generate an electrical field around something and you have movement, it creates lift, it makes it lighter. So therefore the B-2, by generating an electrical field around its wings on takeoff, makes it capable of being able to take off a lot quicker than what it should normally do for its size and shape.
Well, it's definitely something that they must worry about constantly, because whenever people, for instance, leave Area 51, they follow them, they know what they're doing, they're friends, and I'm sure a lot of people in the military, are watched as well. I mean, we recently had a guy on our show. We had to give him an anonymous name because he had received a threat from the military years ago.
Yeah.
And it looks like that recently, just from being on our shows, that, something happened again with them. So,
That's right.
This is going on right now.
Yeah, it does happen, and people do get frightened. What was interesting, what you mentioned earlier about Bob Lazar, when Bob Lazar first came out, it was, people didn't believe him so much because it was just too fantastic to believe. He really did sort of corner that market, in a sense of speaking, when he came out and talked about this back engineering program at the S-Force facility not too far from Area 51 on Papoose Lake. Now, what's really interesting is that a lot of researchers around the world sort of poo-pooed that and said, look, we don't believe him, and tried to dig some dirt on Bob, and of course everybody's got something in the closet, unfortunately. But really, at the end of the day, he's always stuck to his guns, and I've always thought him very credible. And what's really interesting over the last year is that announcement that came out, and it was also in the New Scientist magazine.
Oh, that element.
Yeah, that establishments that have actually manufactured an element 115.
That's it, yeah.
And also the fact that there's actually been some whistleblowers now, which you could say deathbed confessions. I know that Richard Dolan, a very well-known UFO investigator and researcher in the States, has recently interviewed a gentleman, an elderly gentleman who's terminally ill. He's a deathbed confession, and he was working for the presidential administration at the time and was ordered to go to Area 51 to account what the expenditure was. He was taken to S4. He saw these things exactly as Bob mentioned. He talked about the programs that Bob was working on, and he clarified and a written statement signed by him that everything that he said was pretty much exactly spot on what Bob was involved with. So now you're getting people come forward and saying, Bob Lazar was telling the truth, which was really interesting.
Well, I saw that confession, and it was heart-rendering, and you could tell by the look in his face. He had kidney failure, and he knew that he was going to die soon, and he said, I just have to tell someone. But the only thing that people throw at Bob Lazar is they try to look up his academic record and different things like that, and they couldn't find anything. But tell me, it would be so easy for the military to destroy that or to do that to ruin his credibility, because the man definitely is a genius. I mean, look at all the technology. If you've ever listened to any of his YouTube videos about back-end engineering and nuclear energy, you can tell he's a very intelligent person.
That's right. I mean, to get that level of intelligence, he must have studied somewhere and a prominent place as well. And it's more alarming than the fact that he doesn't seem to register on any documentation or database, attending these establishments, learning the trade he does. He must have learnt it. You can't learn it from a book. And this is what makes it more interesting and possibly provides the evidence to suggest that they have white records, and it's very easily done. A tap of a few computers. I mean, look at the gentleman that was living over here, Gary McKinnon. who's hacked into NASA a few years ago.
I was just reading about that. Cool.
Yeah, he hacked into NASA. He came across dated information regarding a list of personnel, some of which were listed as extraterrestrial officers, which was really, really interesting, which he led that believe that we actually are working with them. He also came up with numerous ships, names of ships, HMS ships, which aren't Navy ships. There's no list of a Navy ship called that. But he believed that it possibly were ships, as in ships in orbit, and a number of photographs of large objects in Earth orbit, which didn't look to be humanly manufactured. All this was just done from a simple slow fax modem, and the exact capabilities of just managing to hack in persistently, and he did manage to get into NASA. Unfortunately, he did get found out, and they did want to extradite him to the US, but he managed to get off with that. But absolutely amazing what you can do with technology, and that's just simple basic equipment.
Well, sooner or later somebody is going to get irrefutable evidence. And, I always wondered, Edward Snowden, all the information that he had about the NSA, if he is holding evidence, in his deck of cards about extraterrestrials, it would be interesting to find out.
Well, I've always thought, Deborah, if he was to release everything he knows, then he becomes a target. Because
True.
Exactly. If you do know something of great importance and you're not talking about it, then that's probably what keeps him safe.
You're right. You're right, but I did think that he probably has that information. But I think they should have amnesty for whistleblowers.
Okay.
When it's found out that what they're saying is true. I mean, I might be an odd bird, but I don't look at Edward Snowden as a traitor.
No.
Because I don't think that we should, it's their right and privilege to tape our personal phone calls. I mean, the NSA tapped in on, Prince Charles, the royal couple, all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, where does that come into national security?
Exactly. I mean, the main facility in the UK is a National Security Agency facility known as Menwith Hill, which is in Yorkshire. And they have been involved in regarding tapping phone calls from all around the world. I got involved in some investigation of the facility some years ago because of a UFO incident that took place there. A craft apparently had come down to the ground, which was witnessed by several people. And it was only on the ground for a few minutes, and then it lifted off and went off into the sky. But the NSA officers did attend and interview those people that witnessed it. But they were only interested in one thing, really. The question that kept arising was, how did the door open and close? And of course, well, the witnesses said it was like an iris of a camera. It kind of opened and then shut. They didn't see any figures or anything, but they saw it open and they saw it shut. And that's all they were really interested in. How did the door open and shut? So, I mean, I thought that was really interesting. So when I went up there and started going around this National Security Agency facility, I immediately realised that we have a map in these books called A to Zs, and it gives you the list and the names of every road in the country. And the roads that surround the facility weren't named, so it was a little bit difficult to sort of, even though that you can travel right past it on the Otley main route through Yorkshire, and you can see all these big white domes, very similar to the big national head office of NSA in Pine Gap in Australia. It looks quite amazing to see, but the secrecy that's involved in this place is extremely high, and they have been monitoring phone calls for a long, long time.
Wow. It seems like we really have no privacy. We don't, but they have it, because we can't find out information about, aerial phenomenon and different things that happen. It's terrible that we're not privileged to get that information, but they can find out everything about us.
Certainly. I mean, I remember when all the telephone systems in the UK went digital about 15 years ago. And what happened when they went digital is that a specialised team went into every single telephone exchange in the UK and fastened specialised equipment which would feed back to the Home Office in London. And when they got all that information, they devised a project called HOMEC, which is called HOMEC is short for Home Office Monitoring of Electronic Communications. And what that basically means is that when we talk on any phone, be it mobile or on your landline, and mention certain words, the Home Office computers automatically start recording. Now, they'd say that this is a legitimate project so that it targets people talking about terrorist acts. However, it also targets people talking about UFOs, the paranormal, and all sorts of other things when the recording starts to take place when you say certain words.
Wow. Now, that is a very telling operation because, I mean, why else would they be interested in the public talking about UFOs if they don't think they exist?
Exactly.
I say UFO, UFO all the time.
They probably have lots of files on you, Russ.
I just say it every day when I'm talking and what have you, sort of like UFO, UFO, UFO.
Well, don't be surprised if the Men in Black come paying you a visit.
Listen, I've had shadow warriors come after me, so they don't bother me, honestly. Yeah.
Have you ever had the Men in Black or anybody come and speak to you, Steve, about your work?
It's interesting that you asked me about that. I haven't personally, because I probably know how to deal with them. But my father, he worked for a big telecommunications company over here. He was a company director for British Telecom. And when he was working there, they were doing some work one day on a telephone exchange where they were swapping lines over onto new lines. And they usually had to wait for people that those lines couldn't be in use when they did the changeover, because they had to take wires out and plug them back in again to connect them. And one particular day when he went in to do this work, everything seemed fine, not a problem. He did his job and then went home, and the following day he got called into the office. And when he got into the office, there was 4 gentlemen in dark suits claiming to be government officials, which had commandeered the head manager's, the head CEO's office to talk to my father. They sat him in a chair. They did a stereotypical interview technique, military style. 1 guy in front of him, 2 guys behind him, and 1 at the door. And questioned him about, were you working yesterday? Did you hear any conversations taking place at the time of these wires being changed over? And he said no, he hadn't heard anything. He said, well, you need to come clean, Mr. Mera. He said, you need to tell us exactly what you heard. And he had no idea what you were talking about. So he said, right, okay, do you mind as if we visit your home? And he said, well, yeah, fine, go. You can visit my home. When do you want to do it? We'll go now, he said to him. And he wasn't allowed to ring my mother and warn her that they were on the way. They put him inside a large vehicle. I think it was a dark-coloured Mercedes. 2 sat in the front. My father sat in the back, in the middle, and on one either side of him. And on the trip to his house, he noticed that there were little wires around the car on the inside, and yet they persisted to question him whilst travelling to his house, saying, is there anything you want to tell us? Do you want to come clean? Did you hear any conversations? And of course he hadn't done, so he clearly said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. When he reached the house, which was also funny because he also knew exactly where he lived, they entered the house, they went through everything, they went through every drawer, they even took his telephone apart, unscrewed it, looking for books and things. What was really interesting is that they found his UFO book collection. And that was
oh, no.
That was the only things they took away with him. 14 books that he had. Small softback books, some of them Eric von Daniken, some Brad Steiger, some old books from the 70s and 80s on UFOs, they took along with him. And they took them away. He went back into work the following day, and talking to people, he found out that it wasn't actually him. It was another guy that he worked with, called Graham, who had actually done the mess up. What had happened was, Graham had gone in that day and accidentally had crossed lines between conversations. Now, what had happened was, a woman was talking to her daughter, suddenly found herself online talking to a military officer he was actually talking to another military officer at the time about a certain type of aircraft known as Black Manta. And this officer was talking from RAF Sealand, which was a very, not a very special place. It's a very low-key military establishment on the border of Wales. But however, RAF Sealand. No,
Yeah.
I've passed it loads of times. It looks nothing. But at the end of the day, what basically happened was that gentleman wasn't seen again. He either taken away to and working at a different facility, or he lost his job. One of the two. At the end of the day, about 3 months later, my father had his books returned to him with a note saying thank you for your cooperation, and that was all. So are those the men in black? Certainly if he descended upon my house, he'd have a field day here. Blimey, well, I've got about 3,000 booooks upstairs, let alone all the other stuff.
Oh gosh, they would have to bring a big van to get all your stuff.
Well, but the thing is that I'm equipped with knowing how my rights. I'm equipped with knowing what to say, how to deal with certain issues now, simply because I've studied in the field. However, my father was absolutely stunned. He didn't really know how to deal with it. He just cooperated with absolutely everything that they said. But what were they looking for? What was Black Manta? Anyway, I did a little bit of research over the years, and it was suggested that Black Manta was a secret aircraft. Now, if that is the case, you've got two military officers, one of them situated at RAF Sealand in the UK on the border of Wales, talking to another military officer by not a secure line at all. He was actually just using the normal landline, talking about something which is probably quite sensitive, which got cross-lined with this other woman who put a complaint in, and she overheard the conversation, and so did the telephone engineer at the time. And they thought that telephone engineer was my father. So can we say those are men in black? Certainly, there's certainly a divide between the strange accounts in the 1970s and 80s of men in black phenomena, especially throughout the United States, because people refer to them as very strange looking, very acting unusual, certainly robotic in some cases. But these were government officials. So there are men in black, and there were certainly men in black. There were certainly two different types of the phenomena.
That's incredible.
Going back, Steve, to RAF Sealand, yeah. It's strange because with the Berwyn Mountains case that I was working on, that does actually come into. It does play a major part. There's RAF Sealand.
Well, that's really surprising because it doesn't look, and it's not notable to be one, isn't it? But even when that happened with my father, I thought something's got to be more involved with RAF Sealand than what meets the eye.
Believe me, there's things I know about RAF Sealand, believe me, and you would be very surprised. So when you mentioned that, my ears are pricking up. I'm thinking, whoa, black. What did you say they call it? Black Manta.
Black Manta, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Now, that's really interesting because that's the first time I've heard of anybody else talking about RAF Sealand in connection to something unusual, because I always assumed it was a very low-key facility.
Well, I'm going to tell you something else, Steve. Right? Yeah. Can you see me? Is my camera still on?
I can't see you. I've got your picture up.
Wait a minute, right? Yeah, because this. Right, yeah. Oops.
Right, I can see you now, Ross.
Yeah, this is what I was given about the Berwyn Mountains, right? Yeah.
All right.
The case.
Yeah.
Where these 5 gentlemen saw the flying saucer.
Yeah.
And if you have a look here, right? Yeah. And you will see. I don't know if you can see it, but
yeah.
Where is it now? There, Chester, yeah, in Chester.
Yeah.
And that is where I don't know if you can see it that good, but that is where that night all the helicopters went from Chester, RAF Chester, or RAF Sealand as it's known.
Ah, interesting.
You see?
Yeah, interesting.
Because it has 2 different names.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I wasn't aware of that at all. I mean, it just goes
hell yeah,
credence to RAF Sealand being involved in some other things that people led to believe it's only a low-key facility when it might not be. Perfect is what the military do, though, that, isn't it?
Well, that's it. You know, sort of like hide it somewhere visible.
Yeah, in plain sight, because you can drive right past the establishment, can't you?
Of course you can, yeah. But I mean, yeah. Now the thing is, though, I've heard of Black Mantra before.
Yeah. If you do some research around the internet, you'll find that there are references to a secret aircraft. Now we are talking back in 1985 or 86 when this event happened with my father. We were talking about Black Mantra then. Being a secret, obviously some type of secret aircraft.
Was it an aircraft?
Well, I don't know. When you type the references into the internet, you tend to find Black Mantra listed as some type of secret program in regards a military type aircraft, which was allegedly a black program at the time. Because
it could be just something else. I won't say something.
It could be something else. Yeah, they could. Like I said, they've done that before when they said it's one thing and it turns out to be something else.
Yeah, it's not necessarily an aircraft. I'll be honest with you. But when you mention two things, when you mention Black Mantra, right? Yeah. And sort of like, and the other thing, sort of like, Sealand and what have you, RAF Sealand and RAF Chester, as I know it as. That is very bizarre. Honestly, that is so bizarre. Do you know what a mantra is?
A mantra?
Yeah.
What the reference means, or?
No, well, what is mantra? What does the actual word mean?
Go on, you'll have to enlighten me, mate. I don't know.
Is a mantra something that you say to bring? Is it like a power, a power word?
I've heard of it in association to meditation techniques and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Entering into a mantra.
Yeah.
Which is a state of mind, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
It certainly is, yeah. And the thing is, yeah, it is, that's what threw me at first. But when you said Black Mantra and then you mentioned RAF Sealand, I'm thinking, flipping heck.
Yeah, it is interesting. I can see a new research program coming together here.
Through something else that I basically got involved with, I realised that sort of like a lot of these projects are not about just aircraft. You know what I mean? There's believe me, they're doing all sorts of things. Sorts of things.
Yeah.
Well, some scientists here in the United States just invented a new kind of paint, and they said it's the blackest black that you could imagine, and they can paint aircraft this, and then when they fly in the night sky, that you absolutely cannot see anything about them. So they're constantly perfecting technology so they can hide aircraft, so they can do things without the public knowing about it.
But if they're blacker than black, they will stand out.
Well, they said it was called absolute black, and that when you looked at it, you couldn't really see anything. It's almost like it was so black that it made it invisible. But there's, a lot of the triangular shaped things that you see, most all of them have been black.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Initially, they used a paint called, I think it was CARP, C-A-A-R-P, I think it was CARP or CARP, which was a reference and an acronym for this special radar deflective paint that they used. They did mess up on the B-2 bombers when they first manufactured them, and they ended up having to spend another $2.6 billion on spraying them because they just weren't radar deflective enough. They managed to get that sorted now. But then, if you read between the lines, and the B-2 bomber is old. It's very old. They have some of the stuff that they got now. I know that there's some circulation of some photographs across the internet of the new SR-72, which to be honest with you, it just looks like a flying transformer. It's just absolutely. You don't even have to find anything from that. Just seeing that thing come towards you is enough to put the fear of God in you.
Wow. Well, I know they're always testing their stuff. I know they haven't done it recently, but about 10 years ago, where I live at is close to a huge mountain. It's called Pilot Mountain. It just juts up out of the earth. It's enormous. It almost looks like Devil's Tower. And there would be jets always coming over so low. I mean, I could just stand in my yard and you could look up. I mean, they were probably less than 1,000 feet. And so many people complained. There would be 2 of them at a time coming over so low. The sound would absolutely, just almost break your eardrums. It was so loud. So a lot of people complained. And the response they got back from the military was they were learning how to fly low enough to avoid radar. They're just always doing things, and unless people complain about them, you're not going to find out. And even then, who knows if it's the truth?
Well,
but
I think most of the time, I think a lot of these military establishments like the fact that the UFOs are something in existence, because people don't look up and shout top secret military aircraft. They look up and shout UFO, and that's a great cover for them because they don't have to explain themselves. I mean, there was a new ruling, I believe, that took place I think it was about 12 years ago. I know it was about 12 years ago in the UK. I'm not too sure in the US. And one of those rulings is that if an unidentified flying object is seen over a civilian area of a certain capacity, that they don't pursue them with aircraft, because what you tend to get, you might be just the same in the States as it is in the UK, but what you would tend to get is the newspapers will run a very small little side column saying a UFO was seen over, say, Greater Manchester, and several people said it looked like this, and that'll be the end of it. However, if you say that, if they put planes up there as well to scramble these UFOs out of the sky, then that makes significant news. That could make front page. Military aircraft pursue UFO across the Greater Manchester sky. That's something that they don't want. So I think in some ideas is that ignorance is the best thing to deal with it.
Steve,
well, I'll agree.
What did you say the name of that aircraft was? That one that looks like a transformer?
I think it was the SR-72. SR. Do you remember the old SR-71?
Not really, no.
Well, the Blackbird was the SR-71. Okay.
Right.
The SR-72, I think there are some images knocking around the internet. I think there's one situated on top of an aircraft carrier, which was being refueled.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at that thing, it tell you it just looks scary. I mean, that's the stuff we do know, Russ. Let alone the stuff we don't know.
Right, I'm looking at it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I tell you, some of the stuff. I don't know if you picked up on that article that was released by the mainstream news media in the UK last month, but it was Boeing announced that they are now manufacturing aircraft that are fuelless, and it's called fuelless propellant, and that method of fuelless propellant is anti-gravity. What they're using is free energy on these new aircraft they're manufacturing. So I doubt the fact that they will get less, we'll be paying any less for tickets to travel across the country, even though it's not costing them anything.
That's amazing. Well, a lot of technology does leak out or information after the fact. I know that I watched a YouTube video last month about President Bush and where he lived, that there were unidentified objects approaching at a fast speed at his home residence. This was after, he was out of the presidency. And they sent military fighter jets, to intervene because it was so close. Well, this was months after it happened, and I could not find anything in the mainstream news about it.
No.
And I thought, well, why didn't, they didn't show anything about that, on the regular news. It just ended up, in an investigation by someone on YouTube. So we don't always get informed about, things in the sky that aren't identified.
That's right. I think, obviously, and in many cases, the media is controlled to some degree, certainly news establishments. I mean, I give a typical example of this. I remember back when the Viking landed on Mars, and they said, "Oh, the Viking has landed," and every single newspaper in the UK, I don't know if it was the same for the US, but every single newspaper in the UK, it had front page, landed on Mars, and a wonderful picture of the Viking on the Martian surface. And I remember thinking back to that, I said that, that's a historical event. I've actually kept the newspaper, from that time. And when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were asked to do a TV show, Neil Armstrong turned it down, and Buzz Aldrin entered into the TV show about 4 years ago called The First Men on the Moon. And it was not only televised and pushed out across the UK, it went out internationally. And on that programme, documentation, and I've got that on DVD, and it's been circulated and put out on numerous TV channels around the world, and still continues to. Buzz Aldrin stipulates the fact that they were followed by UFOs to the moon, they were watched by UFOs whilst they were at the moon, and they were followed back to Earth by UFOs from the moon. Now, I had to rewind the tape. When I first saw it, I thought, did I just hear that right? Is he saying that UFOs followed him, UFOs were there, and UFOs were on the way back with him? This is Buzz Aldrin. He walked on the moon with Neil Armstrong. And he did, and he said it on more
Incredible. See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that Buzz had said that.
Yeah, he said it on more than one occasion. If you look it up, I think it might be on the YouTube. It's called First Men on the Moon, and it was an international documentary that went out only about 4 years ago. I went rushing out to the shops the following day because I expected when this hit our television screens in the UK that it was going to reach national press. Not a single paper picked up on it. Not one single paper.
That's incredible because it's the same thing with Edgar Mitchell. He's got one on there too, just from 2010, that says the same thing. And I'm thinking, why isn't he on the Today Show or on Oprah or doing something? Because, it's profound. Profound stuff by incredible men of courage and reputation.
The good thing is, Deborah, is that footage is still available out there to watch, and people can see it for themselves. It's First Men on the Moon. It's a TV documentary with Buzz Aldrin stipulating throughout the whole TV show about how many UFOs were seen and pursued their visit to the moon and back to Earth.
Well, Steve, I'm gonna look that link up, and I'm gonna post it on my Skywatcher radio page. I'm glad that you brought it up. That's really incredible.
It is. It just goes to show that there must be some definite media control on what they want to be put in the news and what they don't want to be put in the news.
Well, Steve, can I ask you? We talked a little bit about paranormal stuff. Is there any place that you would love to go and be able to investigate? If you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh, well, that's a question I've never been asked in 31 years. That's interesting. Where would I go if I could go to any place in the world? You see, most people around the world believe the UK is the most, the haunted place on the planet. Being the UK and with its history and old buildings and castles and so on. For me, it doesn't really do that any much for me. I've come, honestly, I've become a bit numb to it all over the last 31 years. The times I've been told that there's some demonic entity in the cellar, and I go down there, I'm sat in some damp, dark cellar alone, for about 2 hours, and absolutely nothing happens. The times I've done that, there's so many, is that I've become kind of numb to it, Deborah. It doesn't bother me going to places like that anymore. I'm quite comfortable in the dark, and I don't really fear the paranormal, even though I did get a punch in the back in 1996, but I've never had an incident like that yet again, though. But for me, one place strikes a chord, and that's in the UK, and I've only visited it once. and I'd love to go back there again. And that's a place called Newstead Abbey. Now, Newstead Abbey is in Nottingham Forest, where the legendary Robin Hood and his merry men lived, and it's a very large building, which was at one time had an attachment onto it, which was like a very large church, and that was shut down by Henry VIII, the getting rid of all the Catholic faith in the country at the time. But the actual building, which was housed monks and is very large. When I visited there, I took my equipment. I was doing a television show, actually, working with people in the States for BBC America. And I was doing a 12-part TV series in regards to haunted locations in the UK. And we've flown four Americans over to visit some of these historic buildings that we have in this country, which the US have very lack of. And what was really interesting is that on attending one part of the building, I had all my equipment in my briefcases, and all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. All my equipment started going off inside the case. I hadn't even opened them. They had batteries in, and they were ready to be used, but at the EMF detector, the geomagnetic detector, the microwave detector, the magnetometer, every single thing was just going mad in this particular room. I've never seen that ever. I've done a lot of investigations. I've done thousands of different investigations over the last 31 years. I've never come across that.
I bet you thought about that for a long time, trying to figure it out, didn't you?
I did, and the only thing I can consider is that to have all those anomalies taking place in one particular room at the same time was just, I've never heard of that before. And I'd love to go back and visit again and do...
I was going to say, I hope you go back, because now I want to know.
It's a lovely place. I'd love to go back, and I probably will do at some stage. But the problem for me is that at this moment in time, I'm dealing with a number of residential investigations on behalf of city councils and housing associations, and I'm doing quite a lot of lecturing around the country as well at the moment. Some of the times are a little bit limited, but I will be going back there again, because I do want to try and find out what can cause all those things to switch on and fire up like that all of a sudden. Which is very, very odd.
That's incredible.
I just got a comment here from Steve. He says that trouble is with Buzz Aldrin is that he blows hot and cold and says one thing one minute and then claims that he has been misquoted.
Yeah.
That was from Steve Wills said that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Steve Wills is spot on. Yeah, he does do that, and he has notably done that for quite some time. And what was interesting, though, is that when he went public with that television show, there would have been a pre-run, because I've done quite a number of TV shows myself, so I do know that they do have these pre-runs and they know what they're going to be set prior to what actually goes out. It wasn't a live show, so it wasn't like he was caught on a hoof. This was all done prior to the pre-show. A lot of work's done in regarding script writing as to what is going to be said in that show, what angle are we going to approach. The show was designed initially to actually simply talk about how they managed to get to the moon and how they almost didn't get home. The only reason why they got home was because of a ballpoint pen, believe it or not. A ballpoint pen saved the guys because they had a fault in the lander, and what happened was there was some short and they needed something to sort this problem out, and a ballpoint pen was seemed to be the ideal thing, and it did, and it worked. And it got him back. It got him back to station with Mike.
Saved by Big.
That's right, exactly. So we got them to thank for that. And that was the device how the show was supposed to go. But obviously all this sort of stuff came in regarding these UFOs. And of course, if it was only one astronaut coming forward and saying that they've seen UFOs whilst they've been out in space or done certain trips, lunar orbiting trips and stuff, then fair enough. But I think we've got over 56. I think it's 56 astronauts now which have come forward.
Yes.
It's a very large amount, and more so as time goes on, probably. So it was very interesting, but he is spot on. what was really interesting, in Wrexham, I visited an event some years ago, and I met up with Martin Kovenich, who was at that time head of ballistic missile operations in Russia. And he also met up with Alexander Karvanov, I think his name was, and he was an astronaut who had been in space for over half a year on the Mir space station. And I remember whilst being in this conference and chatting, I chatted with them during breaks and stuff, so that was quite nice. So, got some interesting information. But what was really interesting is that everybody in the audience was asked if they had a question to write it out and pop it in this hat. And then it would be 6 questions will be randomly picked out of about 300 people in the audience. And what was really good is that my question came up.
Cool.
I was one of the 6. And what was really interesting was that the question I'd put down on this piece of paper was simply, whilst you were in orbit on board the Mir space station, and I was very particular on what I said, did you at any other time see anything unusual in orbit, such as an unidentified object, or ball of light, or manoeuvrability of some strange craft? Right, and
that was good.
Yeah. And what was really interesting was, all of a sudden, the question was given to the pair, which were sat on stage on these 2 chairs on their own, and this blank expression fell across both their faces. And then all of a sudden they turned to each other and entered into a very long, and this is I would have loved to speak Russian at this time. They went into a very long conversation with each other, whispering for about a good half a minute before Alexander Kovnev stood up and said, "No."
Oh my gosh, that is very revealing right there.
Exactly, and I wish to God that I could have spoke Russian at that time and overheard that conversation.
Wow.
Oh dear.
That's just luck, that my question being drawn.
Well, I bet afterwards you knew what they did spoke louder than words, actually, their physical actions. So that was really cool.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I know these things obviously are being sighted in near orbit. As to what they are, I don't know. I mean, are these some type of aircraft or military satellites that have the capability of manoeuvring around that other countries have? I just really don't know. They remain unidentified objects, of course, but in space, I think NASA once referred to them as unidentified space vehicles, USVs, and other references. But there's a number of NASA communications floating around the internet. Some people have listened to them and claim that, that they've actually said such things like alien spacecraft, or I'm observing the unusual object, and just things like that, which lead to more speculation as to the fact that maybe they are hiding something, or they actually are filming something that they simply don't know what it is. We can't assume that they have all the answers. I mean, at the end of the day, humanity is still on a learning curve, and we are finding new wonderful things on planet Earth, even now. I mean, even at the bottom of the oceans, we know less about than we do the surface of the moon. So, we are completely finding new things out all the time with the technology that we've got. And people often think that we might have all the answers, and I don't think that's always the case.
Well, all I can say is they can't hide everything forever. Sooner or later, it's going to come out, because there's people watching like you, myself, Russ, all the other investigators, and the UFO radio shows. People are watching, trying to find out information, and sometimes I think we're the only ones who are, but I'm not going to stop because I want to know the answer.
Yeah, but what's really interesting is, like, with this, like a radio show like this tonight, is that something significant, as just me mentioning about RAF Sealand earlier and about the
exactly,
Mantra, and what Russ has told me and what I've told Russ, is that it just goes to show how important communication is, and that and that people out there should be working with each other, trying to find answers. And that's what it's all about. I came into the subject many years ago. I was trained through the British UFO Research Association. I became the regional investigative coordinator for them, and they gave me the principles of ufology, and that was That was simply to share that information, distribute that information, and work together to find an answer as best we possibly can. Unfortunately, ufology nowadays in the UK has become a little bit sort of self-centered, really, and a lot of people don't communicate, and that's a real shame, because that just goes to show, just with me mentioning that tonight and what Russ has been worked on previously, that connections are built this way and can lead into certain directions of interesting research.
Well, that's the only way that this kind of stuff can get out, because, the media outlet doesn't readily, release a lot of information. I mean, other than the normal. I mean, I've read so many articles about Area 51, I practically know them by heart. But it's the people that investigate on their own and do work, that know their stuff, that you can make a connection and you can find out something new about the Berwyn Mountain incident. So it's really great.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, that came out. I did 20 years of investigative work, and I met somebody who was a freelance journalist about 7 years ago, and I showed him my box files, and my videos and everything. And one of the box files was just on the Berwyn Mountains itself. And I showed him the letters that I'd got back. And there were documents that were pertaining to something going on the same time, the same night as, the Berwyn Mountains.
Yeah.
Which was, I'll tell you what it was. It was a photo flash exercise. And a photo flash is a photo flash bomb, an exercise. These aircraft drop these bombs, big 6-foot bombs, and they explode, and they light up the ground below for ground troops to show up, sort of like, and let the army, the other side and what have you, see the ground troops. Or they can call in an airstrike if there's something there that they want to hit, etc. But they were also used in the sea to actually show submerged vehicles, submarines, etc. Yeah. And it give where there was taken off from, which was Isle of Man, Derby Range, and it told you the time, which was late evening. They're letting these bombs off over, it says, Liverpool and North Wales, heavy populated areas, and photo flash bombs have got it'll burn through concrete. What do you call it now? What's the name for it? I forgot the name of it now. It burns. It can burn through people, metal, concrete, and what have you.
You mean thermite? Do you mean like thermite?
Yeah, well, yeah, but
it will burn through anything.
It's like they use like these grenades, and it has the same stuff in. I forgot the name of it now. Anyway, it'll come to me after.
I know what you mean, Ross. It's similar to a bit like thermalite, but I know what you're on about. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're letting this sort of like stuff off over residential area, sort of like where there's people and built up areas, and phosphorus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like, so they're letting that off. But what we found out through the testimony from these 5 men was at the side of the road where the flying saucer was found, where it had landed. These guys are saying, we've seen this and we've been told by the police to move away and get out of the area. But the thing is, they said that they mentioned Sealand, that they mentioned that there had actually been depth charge in the Irish Sea. And so I started writing off and getting all these letters back, and it were all adding up. It was, well, that happened and that happened before. And, so my friend, like I say, Steve Lumley actually wrote a book based on my research, you see, about the Berwyn Mountains.
Yeah, it was an interesting case. I mean, I know a lot of people have had a stab at it and come up with all sorts of different things, but, for me, it seemed like obviously the event had taken place, and then obviously there was obviously some type of, event taking place where people thought it was something and it wasn't.
Yeah, that's a piece of metal from the craft.
Right.
He guards that with his life.
Made it into a necklace, though.
Yeah, I usually wear it, but I've been told I've had a bit of distressing news, and that is, be very careful, don't wear it, Russ.
yeah, it was probably.
Do not wear it because you don't know where it's been, you don't know what power it's got and what have you, and so I'm taking it very serious.
Yeah, well, they even advise people now not to approach meteorites.
That's right, yeah.
So, for the biotopes and biological, diseases or anything that might be in it that we don't have control of.
Yeah, well, I think I'm changing into an alien. Too late.
Well,
Too late.
Steve, I'll have to say you really know your stuff. I mean, I've learned stuff tonight, so it's always good to hear that people like you are taking these things seriously and doing such hard investigative work.
Well, I do as much as I possibly can. I mean, I'm the managing editor of Phenomena magazine, which is a free magazine that goes out. That's phenomenamagazine.co.uk. It's a free magazine for goes out to the world every month. I think we're on issue 63 now, going for about just over 6 years. Around about 2 million downloads a year.
Wow.
We've got a standalone issue in Spain as well with our own editors there and distributors all around the world. So it's doing exceptionally well. And we push that information out for free because we believe we believe in distributing, up-to-date and current information as much as possible on a variety of different things. Phenomena magazine covers everything in the world of strange and profound, be it UFOs, be it paranormal or supernatural, crop circles, cryptozoology, anything that's unusual ends up in there. Apart from that, I also run the British Investigators Training Course, which is a course devised some years back. I did some research in regards how many courses are available in the country to learn about the investigation techniques of the paranormal, the scientific investigation techniques of UFOs. How to investigate them in an authoritative manner. And what I found was a lot of the information, there were some good bits of information around, but no courses really had the full package. And a lot of things were literally out of date and needed updating with new material. So what I did is I actually emailed, and I built up quite a consistent list of people and contacts over the years from all over the world. And I went straight to the people that had spent 30 years in their certain subjects, be it whatever, the leading expert on crop circle investigations, the leading expert on Earth-like phenomena, which was Paul Daverow, and I contacted all these people and I asked them, I explained to them that I wanted to put this course together, and then would you provide some information, to the investigation techniques and identification and all those sorts of things. And lo and behold, after about 2 years of working on it, I managed to devise a thorough, proper course. It's about 286 pages, and it's absolutely jam-packed full of all the latest investigation techniques, depending on what you want to investigate. That went out worldwide as the British Investigators Training Course, and that's just done phenomenal since. Since then, we released an advanced course, and we're currently working on the professional one as well. So I deal with that being the head tutor. But most of my time is taken up with writing and lecturing and investigation now, unfortunately. But when I do like to get my hands dirty still, 31 years on, I still like to get out there and get on the locations where alleged incidents have happened. And so, but even though I do have teams of people that can carry out that work for me if I'm busy, but I still like to do the investigations when I get time.
Well, there's nothing like boots on the ground, to go in the actual place. I recently went to Roswell, New Mexico, And I knew there wasn't anything much going on there, but I just wanted to go down there just to imagine what it must have been like in that time. So,
yeah,
fascinating work.
It's a fantastic place. I mean, I saw something really profound on the internet a couple of months ago, and it was somebody who was selling bags of dirt from Roswell, and people were actually buying them, believe it or not.
Holy cow! I could have made a fortune if I'd loaded my trunk down.
How do you mean could? Get back there and get some.
That's what I had to do. I did pick up some rocks.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it when it.
You can't do stuff. They can't take rocks.
Oh well, I actually paid for them. It was a place that sold the rocks and everything. I got some fascinating rocks from down there.
Yeah. I mean, it is a fascinating location, and of course they celebrate, you know, the with all the UFO stuff that they've got there, and of course the town has become sort of how to make money, you know.
Hey, there's a green Martian on the corner of KFC. Who would have ever thought?
Do you know how many people it has every year pass through its door?
Oh, they must be
got a festival. It's millions. It's millions because. And you know something? I'm not being funny, right? Yeah, but we've got cases in this country with just as much evidence and more, right? Yeah, and sort of like nobody does anything.
No, that's right.
You know what I mean? It's like with like the Berwyn Mountains, right? Yeah, it's like wow, you know, there should be people going there and sort of like, you know, selling tickets to, you know, just the same as Roswell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree.
Even I've got things here. I filmed 2 flying triangles come out of the bay here in Filey, right? Yeah. I've filmed flying dolphins, you know, all sorts. But this one thing I filmed.
I remember that. I remember the flying dolphin, Russ, because I was actually on an investigation that night with my team up at near Cannock Chase, and I remember you phoning me that night.
Right, yeah.
I was on the investigation, telling me it was heading my direction.
Yeah. You see, we used to do stuff like that. You know, one time we had mobile phones, and the thing is, by the way, right? Yeah, this is, you know, I know it's not only UFO related, but we're having Skype like now, right? Yeah, and we're having sky watchers, live sky watchers. And sort of like, if anybody's doing, you know, like, what do you call it, ghost walks and onto the...
Yeah.
And so they can actually Skype in, right, yeah, and sort of like show what and talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
So
this is what UFO people do on Saturday night, Steve. we look at the sky.
I'm not being rude.
No.
I've got a funny fear. Clarice.
He says I sound like Clarice from Silence of the Lambs. He's making fun of my Mayberry accent.
Because you're being so cheeky now.
Well, actually, it's a good idea on my part to do a skywatch because the last UFO that I saw was only 1.5 miles from my home. So it's really a good idea, you know, to do that.
It keeps me out of trouble, I've been told anyway, so.
Well, that would be true, I'm sure.
I know that Russ was just mentioning about ghost walks and stuff, and I just wanted to mention it. The most amusing ghost walk I actually went on was back in 1994, and I visited the alleged haunted town of York in the UK, and it is notably supposed to be very haunted. And they do this town walk where you've got a couple of guides that take you around the town, the cobble streets and so on, and pointing out where strange apparitions and ghostly encounters have taken place. Now, what was really amusing was that one of the guides was dressed up like Count Dracula, and he was leading the pack of about 26 people along the cobble streets of York, and all of a sudden this woman came at him from out of the blue, from round the corner, with this great big stick in her hand, and she attacked him with this stick, and he was on the floor.
Oh, wow.
Everybody was laughing, thinking it was part of an act, and that this woman was trying to stake this vampire.
Oh, Lord.
It turned out that it was a woman, a woman who lived there, who was so fed up of the walks going past her house that she came out and attacked the tour guide. But
Wow.
nobody would help him because we all thought it was part of the act.
That is hilarious. They all got a free show, didn't they?
that was a ghost walk not to forget.
I thought you were gonna say was an angry wife and she caught her husband cheating and she was gonna beat him up or something.
Oh, dressed up as Dracula? Where do you come from?
Well, hey, he could have still cheated.
Yeah, but dressed up as Dracula.
Well, you know, there's been odder things than that have happened in the United States, so.
Oh, man, that must be really odd then, because personally, myself, I can't think of anything more stranger.
Oh, I could tell you, if you get some time, I can tell you a few things.
Oh, don't. No, keep it clean.
Hey, I live in Mayberry.
And?
It's always clean in Mayberry.
Oh.
Safest town in the United States.
Thank goodness for that. I'm getting really worried then. Me. Oh, flipping heck.
Steve, I just want to say it has really, really been a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope you'll continue your work, and I look forward to reading your magazine. I'm going to put the link on my Skywatcher Facebook page.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I'll be doing it. I can't see me doing anything else in the near future. I think I'll be carrying on.
Yeah, put it up on our site as well. Our sites. We've got now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, brilliant, great. Yeah, I mean, and equally we can put something in the magazine about the radio show and that. So I'll try and get some more of our listeners out there to tune in and get into the into blogging some questions and so on and so forth.
Well,
that would be great.
If anybody wants to come on the show, I mean, sort of like in your group, anybody has had a, you know, sort of like a UFO experience, sighting or abduction, etc.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to have wrote a book, you don't have to have been on television or anything. You know what I mean? It's a case of, we're like anybody. A guest is a guest, sort of like, and believe it or not, we're getting quite a lot now that are coming on to talk all sorts of strange things.
Yeah, well, I'll certainly put the word around, Russ, and we'll put it in the magazine, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure people out there will be interested once they start circulating the information.
But like,
hey, if we all work together, we can reach out to more people, and that's what it's all about, is getting the word out, getting the information out that you're not crazy if you see something like this. You know, report it, document it. That's how we find out stuff, just like you guys did tonight.
Yeah, I say that to people all the time. He's so important. Only a handful. I mean, when people witness something in the sky which is unusual, or they have a paranormal experience which is unusual, rarely do they report them. Rarely does it ever reach our desk. And now we only get we probably get about 20 to 25 UFO reports a year, unless we have a spate of incidents which have reached 60s and 70s. And the same, pretty much, more paranormal stuff gets reported nowadays though. But if that's only a very low percentage, the amount of reports that reach our desk, because some people only tell their friends and family. Some people don't even talk to newspapers. Some people don't talk at all about their experiences. So it's got to be a real minority, the amount that we actually are getting, and we still get.
Down. It's gone. The numbers of reports. I mean, if I get one a year, I'm lucky. You know what I mean?
I know what you're saying, Russ, but I don't think the UFO phenomenon is subsided anymore. I think the reporting of it is.
Yeah, well, you know, the problem with this is, there's a couple of problems with this, right, yeah? And that is now because there's no UFO desk, right, yeah? I think there's certain people that were in UFO groups who were trying to get areas known as so-called UFO capitals are not interested in that anymore because they know that it ain't going to happen because there's no UFO desk.
That's it.
Right, yeah? And I'll tell you now, I know for certain that, you know, sort of like, I'd heard it said that so-and-so was a place there's been more UFO seen, but yet the most video footage, right, yeah, was taken from around Filey and Scarborough, video footage of this thing happening like when I rung you and told you and what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, what there was taken in consideration was somebody writing in or whatever, emailing to the Air Force, what do you call it, Air Staff 2, to the UFO desk, and that basically was making an area into a UFO capital. And people out there should be ashamed of themselves because they let this happen. The UFO investigators know about this, and if they don't, they're not UFO investigators. But what anybody says, but that had been manipulated. That had been manipulated at that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's thanks to high heaven, and it's a good job it's closed, because the thing is, why has that got to be the be-all and end-all of reporting?
No, I mean, it's wrong. I mean, they obviously devised that as a funnel to try and get all the information, you know.
And the other thing is, Air Staff 2 and what have you, how many of them actually, right, brilliant investigator, and I couldn't do one of your courses because, I'll be honest with you, I'm dyslexic, right, yeah? So, you know what I mean? Like, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, it's a bit hard, you know what I mean, when you're dyslexic to do something like that. But I've got common sense and what have you. And one of the things what I found interesting is, you've got a reporting centre there, right, yeah? Or an office where people report UFOs. What do they do when they report the UFOs? Because, like I asked a certain person some time ago, how many of those UFO reports that came into your desk did you go out and investigate?
Oh, probably not many, I tell you that.
Well, exactly how many? How many did there?
Probably zero.
Yeah, well, you know something? Yeah, I've never got an answer, right, yeah? Because it's like, no, I've never had an answer. I've never had, you know, I've put on the internet, on Facebook, could you tell us how many, you know, you've actually been out and in a year, how many would you have actually, if you had 300 reports come in, how many out of those 300 reports did you actually go and investigate? And what was the substantial evidence that you had for those reports to go out? What made it a substantial piece of evidence or a report that you'd want to go out and investigate it? What was the things that stood out about that one sighting, that one report, that made you want to go out more than, say, like the other 299? No answers.
Yeah, this is it. That's the problem. You don't get the answers.
Because if you had the answer to that, fact, what made that different, you'd have the answer to everything. Because they would say, well, we know for certain that wasn't an aeroplane.
Exactly.
Well, how would you know?
How would we know, yeah.
How would you know? Did you see? And then you start asking all the other questions, and so you must know that there's some...
Opens up a big can of fish that they wouldn't say.
You see? Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, I might be dyslexic and what have you, but I'm not stupid.
No, I think the principal thing of ufology nowadays is that it is simple common sense. You know, I mean, he's been up to date with what he's seen in the sky. I mean, how many times have we seen fire lanterns and Chinese lanterns being misidentified? You know, those damn things, they've caused so much. Do you know, I wish I could put my bill in every time I have to go flying out because of those damn things seen in the sky. And I've got used to them, you know, and I devised a method. I had to change part of the course, actually, to devise a method for people who do the course and can see it on the internet and say, can you identify it properly? Is it travelling with the wind? Is it incandescent? Does it flicker slightly? Is it orange coloured? Are there more than one of them? All these things are quite easy questions, aren't they, Russ? But how many people misidentify things?
Yeah, people really need to be educated about what they see in the sky, you know, from the satellites, the airplanes, and the Chinese lanterns seem to be real popular these days for, you know, a lot of reports.
Oh yeah, I've seen some wonderful things from novelty balloons, from Chinese lanterns. I mean, people have believe it or not, people have even misidentified the moon.
Oh my gosh!
I never forget.
Oh my gosh!
Going out on an investigation and somebody misidentified the moon. I couldn't believe it.
Well, you know,
Oh my
you know
goodness!
something. When we've had video footage, I've taken it and I've actually got other video footage. And I was one of the first actually to start using a professional analyst in image enhancement through electric imaging and your standard imaging, you know, from videos and photography, right? Yeah, and you know, some of the stuff what I've got, and like I'm showing this image of this dolphin, and it's looking around and someone said, oh, well, it's a balloon. I said, well, yeah, still, you should be able to see a line going up from the floor to the object, right, yeah? That line would be the tether or the thin rope or string, you know. Because if it's stuck in one, you know, position and moving around, it's got to be tethered, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And sort of like, and, you know, all this sort of, you know, like, you know, I might not be the brains of Britain, but I do understand things and what to look for.
Exactly.
And then and we were in the paper and talking about, you know, anybody seen this? And we had 3 people ring my number, and all they said to us that they'd let a dolphin helium balloon off on the same day, right? Yeah, and 3 different ones. And so when I said to this woman we're talking, oh yeah, it was us. And I said, oh, what colour was it? And she goes, and the bloke behind says, ask him what colour it was. Oh yeah, what colour as well? And
People bored on a Saturday night, Russ.
And I think I said something like pink or something. And she, oh yes, it was pink. And that happened 3 times, and 3 different times when people rung up. I just, you know, I'm thinking to myself, and I just said, well, actually, it wasn't. I was lying. Go.
I know.
You know what I mean? Getting me so annoyed, and then I think it was 3rd time. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. You know what I mean? Unbelievable.
That's just how it is. You always have a few of those mixed in with the real stuff.
Yeah, it says, do you think that there's a reason why they were selling Chinese lanterns to take the sort of like the look away from, you know, the UFOs and what have you, and try to, you know, sort of like make it out that you know, everything was Chinese lanterns then.
I think we've lost Steve.
Just 1 minute, I think he's coming back.
Oh, okay.
And he visited me, knocked on my front door, demanded UFO secrets. I said, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, pal. He says, well, you investigate UFOs. I said, oh, no, I do. But it doesn't mean I've got all the answers. I had to have him removed by the police. He went and lied on me.
Oh my
God. I have to ring the police and we have to take away this guy, you know. There are some strange people out there, there really are, mate.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, gee, I should take my phone number off of my website now, I guess.
I was just saying, Steve, about the Chinese lanterns. Steve was just saying, do you think there's a conspiracy that, you know, all these, you know, sort of like thousands of Chinese lanterns being on sale, you know, and do you think it's taking the sort of like the weight off the shoulders of the powers that be by all these, you know, sort of reports of Chinese lanterns coming in, you know, sort of like other than UFOs? I think he's gone again.
Yeah, it says the call's been dropped.
Every time I talk about these bloody Chinese lanterns.
I know.
What is going on? What is going on?
I guess that's a taboo subject.
Well, it wasn't until just now.
Yeah.
But it looks like Chinese lanterns would be illegal because, you know, they have... couldn't they set something on fire?
Well, they They have been known to set fires. They were trying to ban them in this country. I signed a petition some years ago with a number of other UFO researchers. We did get a lot of feedback about it. They had caused fires. There was some significant fires down south, which fire lanterns have caused, so a considerable amount of damage, and quite a lot of fire servicemen had to sort of come out to deal with the matter, and also that farmers' livestock have died through eating them. When they've fallen on the ground.
Oh.
So there's certainly some issues here, and especially when you know that, there's not even an age limit on these things. A child can go into the pound shop or buy one for 50p and go into a field and light this thing and just let it go. So I think they do need to be regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But the problem is, it's money, it's making money, and sort of like, and this is a problem with the government in this country. Sort of like it doesn't really. It see things like normal people. You know what I mean? And until one maybe flies across Buckingham Palace and goes through and sets a fire there, you know what I mean? Maybe they start worrying then. But if it's...
Well, what if it got sucked into an airplane engine? Couldn't it do some damage? I mean, if a bird could cause a plane to have engine issues, it certainly could cause problems with airplanes.
Of course.
Oh, yes, certainly. Yeah. I think they can cause these hazards, and I think, there's a good reason why they should be regulated, at least not allowing children, obviously. I think they should, have some sort of guidance control on them. It's just the same like with fireworks and other things, really, isn't it?
The problem is, though, you can't control them. Once they're off, you don't know where they're going to go.
Oh, they're just going to go in the direction of the wind, aren't they, otherwise?
Yeah.
I mean, the original tradition was, that the Chinese lanterns were created, and when they were released, they had ordered releases. I mean, they were organised released events. And these things were done usually on the coastline with the wind heading out towards the sea, so that they'd be carried across the water and reflect on the water as well. Hence, it was quite a sight to see. But of course, that tradition's kind of gone out the window, and these things get put up all over the place. I've seen plenty of them, Russ, and I keep getting called out to them. But some people are just so darn adamant, aren't they? They're just adamant that they've seen some extraterrestrial craft from some strange planet, when in fact damn well it was a fire lantern, and you tell them these things and they just won't have it. They just say, no, you're trying to cover it up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt that one single bit, but it all goes to the education of the public and what they understand about UFOs and the phenomenon. But it's certainly frustrating and makes your work, I'm sure, much harder.
Oh, yes. We get people letting them off purposely to try to fool us.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had that. When we advertise that we're going out and, sort of like we're having a Skywatch here in Filey and what have you, what happens? Yeah, that's it. You'll always get somebody turns up and lets them off.
Yeah. I mean, I went to a little place called Nether Poppleton. And a very, very, very small little town out in the middle of nowhere. And there was a local newspaper in this place, and they'd run an article about how all these people at this particular pub, which was the only pub in the village where everybody seemed to descend upon, had seen a mass UFO sightings of at least 16 of these strange lights in the sky travelling slowly over the pub one night, and everybody was out there in the pub yard watching them. And of course it made the headlines, so I went down there to investigate it with a team of 4 people, and it turned out to be fire lanterns. In fact, we went one better, and we found out where they were launched from and the reason why they were launched, and we worked out wind direction. We knew exactly what they did. Well, honestly, Russ, we really got besieged upon. These people were so angry at the fact that we'd rationalised it. They were literally quite nasty with us, when we had to get out of town quick,
Goodness, that's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, some people do really, really want to have those experiences where they see something strange. And all I say to people, when people ask me, how come you see so many things, I just simply say, well, I don't know. I watch the skies. Once I step out that door in the morning, you can guarantee my eyes are cast to the heavens. You know, I can't help it. When I see clouds in the sky, I scrutinise around the edges of them because, you know, just in case I'm going to see a little white thing dart in or dart out of it. You know, I mean, it's just a matter, I think, if you look more, you'll see more. But how many people nowadays walk around with their heads down to the ground and just on this traditional society run where everything seems to be controlled? You go to work, you come home, you watch television, you go to work, you come home, you watch television, and that's pretty much it. People aren't really getting out and about, and certainly they're not looking up neither.
Yeah. And it also they've got the tablets, they've got the mobile phones. You know, I mean, I'd say something worrying. It's like I was walking and I had my mobile and I was basically messing about, sending a message, and it was like dark, and I had my camera over my shoulder, and I'm like this, and somebody were running with a dog, a young lad, and it wasn't only until he got right next to us I realised somebody were around, and sort of like I'm thinking to myself, you know something, that could have been somebody trying to attack me, and I would not have known because I was too busy.
Yeah, I know.
Frightening. It's frightening.
Yeah,
I can see you looking at the clock there. Are you?
Yeah, I'm just checking. Yeah. So it's been great talking with you guys.
It's been a pleasure, Steve. Thank you so much.
No, that's okay. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I'll be pleased to come back on and help out whenever you need me. And I will put the word around. I shall pop the details into our magazine and let all my associates know, and you know, and hopefully they'll get in touch with the show.
Well, it's been a great night. It really has been a great night, and loved having you on. And like I say,
I enjoyed catching up, Russ, and finding out that vital information. You know.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny because there's still ongoing sort of like research in a lot of ways, and you know, that black mantra has turned up more than once.
Yeah.
But in different context. But the context, what it is very, very weird.
Yeah, it's
very weird.
Something to maybe get our teeth into at some stage.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you more about it later on.
All right. Well, thanks. Well, thanks for having me on, and I think we've covered so much stuff today, haven't we?
Yeah.
It's been great.
We usually, to be honest, I mean, sort of like we've been on here from 9 o'clock. And usually, we're on here 3 hours. And I mean, it has been known for me to still be on talking at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I know, you're just as passionate as I am about it, Russ, I know that.
Yeah. When you get people on that, you know, sort of like want to talk about what's... And I love listening, though. I just love, you know. I know.
Really it's good to do that, and you find out so much stuff.
But I better go now because I know I have been called away. And like I say, Steve, it's nice having you on the show, and come back on again. And we'll keep in contact. And thank you again, Deborah Jane East.
You're so welcome. Keep looking up, guys.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, and you have a good evening.
Take care. Good night.
All right.
Bye.
Right. Take care. Good night. Bye.